Chapter 104. When heard this, his eyes fluttered. He thought about how Yu had taken care of him after he changed into his pajamas. He felt a little conflicted and shy. All right, since he had taken care of him, he would not be calculative about the fact that they had been together behind his back. Wen rubbed his stomach and said in a childish voice, "Mommy, I'm hungry." Hence, Fu Yunruo asked the hotel staff to send breakfast up. There were also non-professionals staying in the hotel. In order to avoid trouble, they asked for breakfast to be sent to their rooms. The two of them finished their breakfast and stayed in the room. Wen's scenes were scheduled in the afternoon. They had nothing to do in the morning, so they were too lazy to go out for half a day. It was too hot outside, so it was more comfortable to stay under the air conditioner. Wen leaned on Fu Yunruo and acted coquettishly. "Mommy, let me play with my phone." Fu Yunruo was cold and heartless. "No, children can't play with their phones. It'll hurt their eyes." "I'm not a child, I'm a big friend." "Mommy, let's play for a while." Ever since Yuanshin had set up a social media account for Wen, he was no longer the Wen who looked down on electronic products. He could not help but want to see how many more fans he had. He wanted to see their comments. It would be best if he could interact with them. However, his mother kept a close eye on him and did not let him come into contact with too many electronic products. He was itching every day, but he did not dare to secretly buy a phone himself. He could only act coquettishly with Fu Yunruo so that she could let him play with her phone. Furthermore, there was something he was curious about now. He wanted to know the netizens' attitude towards his first movie. He really wanted to see it. Do you recognize all the words? Do you understand the meaning? He had to look at the comments. Could he understand it? Wen's eyes turned. "It's precisely because I don't understand it that I have to look at it. If there are words that I don't understand, I can look it up in the dictionary or Baidu to learn it." Fu Yunruo. What he said seemed to make sense. Wen blinked. Fu Yun could not help but poke his forehead. Nonsense. However, she still gave him the phone. "You can only play for 30 minutes. You can't put your head so close to the phone." Wen was happy to see Fu Yun relenting, but when she heard that it was only 30 minutes, she bargained. 1 hour, 30 minutes is too short. Fu Yun glanced at him. 20 minutes. Wen, how can you bargain like this?" He hurriedly said, 30 minutes it is. He would go and act coquettishly after checking the time. There was a knock on the door. Fu Yun looked through the peephole and saw Yu standing at the door. Fu Yunruo's mind replayed Yu's words from last night. Her heartbeat quickened uncontrollably. She took 2 deep breaths to calm herself down before opening the door. "Morning," Yu said with a smile. He was wearing a set of sportswear today, and he looked much younger and more energetic. "Morning." Fu Yunruo stepped aside to let Yu in. "What are you doing?" "Nothing much." Yu walked in and saw Wen sitting on the chair, holding the phone with both hands. His head was slightly lowered as he focused on the screen. His short hands were tapping on the screen from time to time. Wen looked up at the person who came in and greeted, "Uncle Yu." Then he lowered his head and continued to play with his phone. Yu looked at Fu Yunruo. Fu Yunruo explained, "He pestered me early in the morning to play with my phone. I only gave him 30 minutes, nothing more." "Right." Fu Yunruo picked up the inkstone that Wen had placed on the table and handed it to Yu. "You forgot to take it with you last night." Yu did not take it and said very naturally, "I bought this for Wen. He will be learning calligraphy later, so he can use this inkstone to practice." Fu Yunruo. But he had not even started learning, but he was already preparing for it. Fu Yunruo realized that she did not seem to care enough about Wen. She also realized that the two of them had different attitudes towards Wen. If Fu Yunruo was inclined to let Wen have a relaxed and happy childhood, these interests and specialties could be taken slowly. However, from Ruo, she could see that he had high hopes for his son. In the beginning, he might have been hiding it, but after seeing Fu Yunruo and Wen Ruo's attitude soften, he pushed his luck and moved forward step by step. Ever since Fu Yunruo did not reject Yu the first time, she realized that she could no longer reject Yu. However, she still had to say, if Wen has too many classes and can't manage, you can start learning 2 years later. With so many classes arranged for him, Wen did not have time to play. Saiyu Ruo agreed. I'll do as I see fit. Learning was naturally based on one's talent, intelligence, and personality. The children of the Sai family were not stupid. In Saiyu Ruo's opinion, Wen was already very relaxed now. Thinking back, he started learning when he was 3 years old. Every day's classes were packed and there was a limit to the amount of time a child could play. Wen Ruo was focused on playing with his phone. He did not know that his parents had already discussed his class arrangements for the next few years. He was overjoyed when he saw that his number of fans was still increasing. Ever since the first post was published according to his wishes, Uncle Yuan used his account to send out a few messages. One of them was to forward the trailer of the upcoming sci-fi film. The netizens had sharp eyes and quickly realized that Wen Ruo was not the one operating the account. They were not surprised because the child was still young and probably did not even know how to read. How would he know how to manage an account? At first, they thought that it was Wen's mother, who was also Fuyun Ruo, who was managing the account. However, they quickly found out that it was Yuan Xin's team. Alright, their little idol could only take over the account when he was 18 years old. It was okay, they would wait for him to grow up. Ever since the production team highlighted that he was in the film and praised him by the film critics, his number of fans increased slightly. At this point, he already had more than 20 million fans. Wen Ruo looked at the comments happily. He then went to the hot comments and looked at the paragraphs that praised him. He was even happier. Fuyun Ruo and Saiyu were talking and did not notice the time. When she noticed, 35 minutes had already passed. Fuyun Ruo went over to remind Wen, time's up. You can't look at it anymore. Rest your eyes. She reached out and asked Wen Ruo to hand over the phone. Wen Ruo held onto the phone and did not let go. He was still reluctant to part with the phone. Can you let me look at it for another 30 minutes? Mom tilde it was over so quickly. He had not finished looking at it yet. Wasn't time passing too quickly? Wen. Fuyun Ruo dragged out her voice. She had a heart of stone. Wen Ruo had no choice but to return the phone to Fuyun Ruo. Tempage, he was fuming. Fuyun Ruo did not care about his little temper. Since they had agreed on 30 minutes, then 30 minutes meant 30 minutes. There was even an extra 5 minutes just now. Saiyu saw that Wen Ruo was unhappy and said, Wen, do you want to go out with me? From Saiyu's point of view, children played games because they had nothing to do. When there were so many things to do, how could they have time to think about the phone? There was still too little homework. However, now that they were in the hotel, Saiyu thought about how hard it was for him to film, so she gave up the idea of calling the teacher over to teach him. Wen Ruo blinked his eyes and did not say anything. Go out for what? He was not going out with Saiyu. Wouldn't he lose face? Saiyu bent down and whispered in Wen's ear. Wen Ruo, who did not care at first, immediately pricked up his ears when he heard Saiyu's words. Fuyun Ruo looked over and was curious. What were these two people talking about so mysteriously? After Saiyu Ruo finished speaking, he smiled and asked, How about it? Do you want to go out with me? At this moment, Wen Ruo did not hesitate and said, Yes. He jumped off the chair and said impatiently, Let's go out. He rushed into the suite and ran out in a short while. He stood beside Saiyu and said, Let's go. Fuyun Ruo asked, Do you want me to go with you? Wen Ruo rejected without hesitation. No, I'll go out with Uncle Yu. Mom, you stay in the hotel. We'll be back soon. Fuyun Ruo was speechless. She looked at Saiyu. Saiyu Ruo smiled and did not say anything. She could only remind him, Be careful. Don't be recognized. Don't worry. We'll definitely disguise ourselves before going out. Saiyu brought Wen Ruo out of the room. Fuyun Ruo saw them go to Saiyu's room opposite and then close the door. Fuyun Ruo did not follow them. She was puzzled. It was really strange. What were these two up to? She closed the door and decided not to care about the two of them. Anyway, Sayu would not betray Wen. Without the child by her side, Fu Yunruo felt much more relaxed. She propped up the pillow and leaned against it to look at her phone. As she had met many colleagues at the charity banquet last night, the group was talking about this matter today. Fu Yunruo quickly joined the conversation. She chatted for a while and went to the forum to look at the gossip. She focused on Wen's messages. Brother Yuan's team was very trustworthy. At least, there were no bad comments under Wen's account. This way, she did not have to worry about Wen's mood being affected. The child was still very young. She did not have to see other people's evil intentions so early. Fu Yunruo scrolled through the two major communication platforms and looked at the hot topics. She chatted with her friends from time to time. When she heard the movement at the door, Fu Yunruo realized that time had passed very quickly. "Mom, open the door quickly." Even through the thick door, she could hear Wen's cheerful little voice. Fu Yunruo went to open the door. Wenruo walked in happily, her little face flushed with excitement. Fu Yunruo's face unconsciously had a smile on it. "Mom, Mom." Wenruo called out happily. Fu Yunruo responded. Sayu also walked in and said to Wenruo, "Go and wash up first." After going out, her entire body was sticky and she had put on some makeup. Fu Yunruo took the initiative to tell Sayu Ruo, "There's makeup remover in the bathroom." Sayu Ruo responded and brought Wenruo, who could not stop, into the bathroom. Fu Yunruo did not go in. However, she was not in the mood to look at her phone at the moment. She looked around from time to time. She was really curious and did not know what the two of them were doing outside. Not long after, Wenruo ran out first. Her little face was flushed red. She ran to Fu Yunruo happily and stood in front of her. She raised her little head and put her little chubby hands behind her back. "Mom, guess what I brought you?" Wenruo looked at her with sparkling eyes full of anticipation. Fu Yunruo saw that he was so happy. She thought about it and remembered that Wenruo had wanted to buy her an accessory last night but did not succeed. He was unhappy for a long time. She instantly guessed that Wenruo did not allow her to follow Sayu on this trip. He must have bought her a gift. However, she could not show that she had guessed it immediately. Fu Yunruo pretended to think for a moment and then said in distress, "What should I do? Mom can't guess." Wenruo's eyes became brighter. "Guess again. I'll give you a hint. It's very exquisite and beautiful." Fu Yunruo pondered for a moment. "Aya, it's really too difficult for Mom. I really can't guess." Wenruo was helpless. Alright, his mother was really too stupid. He excitedly stretched his hand forward. Look. Wenruo's fair and chubby hand was holding an exquisite box the size of his palm. Fu Yunruo said happily, "Is this for me?" Wenruo nodded and looked at Fu Yunruo expectantly. "Quickly open it and take a look." Fu Yunruo opened the small box and an exquisite diamond necklace came into view. She exclaimed in surprise, "It's so beautiful." In the thin platinum necklace, there was a four-leaf clover-shaped bluish-purple diamond hanging in the middle. It was emitting a mysterious glow and was elegant and charming. Seeing Fu Yunruo's extremely surprised expression, Wenruo's small chest puffed up even higher and he squinted happily. Fu Yunruo was really surprised. She felt that this necklace was much better than the one at the auction. "I chose it myself. I like it very much. Thank you, baby." Fu Yunruo was so touched that she wanted to cry. Her baby was really too good. She could not help but hug Wenruo and kiss his chubby cheeks a few times. "I like it very much." Wenruo was kissed and he held his face shyly. Aya, his mother was too clingy. What could he do? He could only pamper her. Wenruo's eyes were bright and resplendent. Since his mother liked it so much, it was not in vain for him to put aside his awkwardness and go out with Sayu. Wenruo, can you help Mom put it on? Okay. Fu Yunruo did not wear a necklace around her neck, so she just put it on. Wenruo picked up the necklace and tiptoed to help Fu Yunruo put it on. Fu Yunruo was very cooperative as she lowered her body and head. No matter how nimble Wen Ruo's little chubby hands were, it took him a lot of time to press such a small hole. However, not long after, Wen put it on for her. Fu Yunruo touched the necklace and kissed Wen Ruo's cheeks again. Her heart was full and she was extremely touched. Raising this son of hers was the right decision. Baby, mommy loves you so much. Wen Ruo was so shy that he blushed. He wanted to be more reserved, but he could not hide the big smile on his face. I love mommy too. Sai Yu Ruo walked out and saw the mother and son sticking together. When Fu Yunruo saw Sai Yu, she could not help but show off. Look, this is a gift from Wen. Sai Yu Ruo looked at Fu Yunruo's blissful smile and the corners of his lips curled up. Actually, this was not just a gift from Wen. This was a piece of jewelry that he had asked someone to send over overnight. The most expensive piece of jewelry was a rare natural violet diamond. He had only borrowed Wen's hand to buy it and then gave it to Fu Yunruo. It could be said that the two of them had given it together. When Fu Yunruo met Sai Yu's smiling and doting eyes, she inexplicably blushed. She felt that she had shown off to the wrong person. Sai Yu was the one who had accompanied Wen to buy the jewelry. He already knew about it. However, Fu Yunruo really wanted to share her joy with someone. This opportunity came very quickly. In the afternoon, they went to the set. Fu Yunruo changed her low-key personality and walked around the set where there were many people. She was wearing a light-colored dress today, revealing her exquisite collarbone. Naturally, one could also see the additional jewelry on her neck. The makeup artist's assistant was the first to notice it. She asked in surprise, Miss Fu, you bought a necklace? It's really beautiful. Fu Yunruo's skin was fair. Coupled with this necklace, they complemented each other and inexplicably made her even more attractive. Fu Yunruo immediately said happily, Really? I didn't buy it. Wen gave it to me as a gift. Wow. When the surrounding people heard this, they immediately gathered around and looked at it curiously. Wen is still so young, but she already knows how to be filial to her mother. She's so sensible. The makeup artist's assistant was very envious. Her son was about the same age, but he was pampered by his grandparents like a little tyrant. Not to mention being considerate to his parents, if he did not do as he pleased, he would turn the world upside down. Other people's children were really enviable. Every time the assistant wanted to educate the child, she would be stopped by her in-laws. This time, she was determined to change the child's personality. Otherwise, it would be difficult in the future. It's so beautiful. Wen is so awesome. Fu Yunruo was extremely happy to be praised. She also thought so in her heart, but she said modestly, the little fellow is still very mischievous sometimes. Soon, everyone in the set knew that Wen had given her mother a very exquisite and beautiful necklace. She was a very filial child. Fu Yunruo's vanity was greatly satisfied, and then she decided to return the gift to Wen. She also loved the child very much. But what should she give the child? The child was still young, and it was not convenient to give a necklace and other jewelry. Fu Yunruo thought about it and decided to cook a big meal for the child. She had not cooked a big meal for Wen for a long time. Coincidentally, Wen had been working hard from filming, so she wanted to nourish her. Hence, after Fu Yunruo confirmed with Sai Yu that he would keep an eye on Wen, she left the set first and returned to the hotel to borrow the kitchen to borrow some ingredients. Originally, Fu Yunruo thought that she would need to spend some time to discuss before she could borrow the ingredients, but she did not expect the hotel to agree so easily. When Fu Yunruo was busy in the kitchen, not only did the chef help to prepare the ingredients, but the head chef also came over to take a look and give her pointers. Fu Yunruo thought to herself that this was indeed a 5-star hotel. The service was so good and considerate. Fu Yunruo also booked a private room in the hotel and told Sai Yu that they would go to the private room when they returned. In the evening, when they returned from filming, Wen followed Sai Yu into the private room. He sniffed and smelled a familiar fragrance. He immediately said happily, "Mom made it." Wen ran over happily and climbed up the chair quickly. He looked at the dishes on the table that were still covered with lids to keep them warm. He reached out and lifted the lid. The rich fragrance wafted over. It was the familiar sweet and sour pork ribs. Wow! When Ruo was overjoyed. He quickly turned the glass turntable. He wanted to see what was on the other plates. Sai Yu had a helpless smile on his face. Fu Yun Ruo quickly came in with 2 waiters behind her. They brought in a pot of rice and a bowl of soup. She was also holding a dish in her hands. Chapter 105. Mom. When saw Fu Yun, he jumped off the chair happily and ran to Fu Yun's side. Fu Yun hurriedly lowered her head to look at him, taking care not to bump into him. Wen was like a little tail, following Fu Yun eagerly. She could feel Wen's liveliness and joy just by taking a few steps. Fu Yun placed the plate on the table, bent over and carried Wen to the seat, then sat on the other side. The waiter opened the lids one by one, then took them away and left the private room. Wen swung his short legs and looked up at Fu Yun. Mom, these are all my favorite meat. Thank you, Mom. You're welcome. Baby, it's been hard on you. Fu Yun said with a smile. Sai Yu served the dishes at the side, then pretended to be casual. These are my favorite too. Wen immediately turned his head and snorted. Mom made them for me. Fu Yun was a little embarrassed. When they lived together in the countryside, Sai Yu did not have any dietary restrictions. He also liked meat, so she did not ask him what he liked. However, seeing Wen's proud look, Fu Yun went along with his wishes. Yes, they are all for Wen. Wen was pleased. Sai Yu smiled at Wen very kindly. Wen was instantly alert. What was he trying to do? Wen enjoyed the treatment of a 1-year-old baby today. Fu Yun paid attention to him the entire time and fed him. When the corners of his mouth were stained with oil, his mother would even wipe it with a tissue. Good Star Lake. Fu Yun focused all his attention on Wen and ignored Sai Yu's existence, but Sai Yu did not mind. Fu Yun took care of Wen while he took care of Fu Yun. He scooped soup for her and gave her food from time to time so that she would not only care about the child. Wen saw this and did not want to be outdone. He tried his best to reach out his short hands to give Fu Yun some food. Mom, eat too. Okay, Mom will eat too. Fu Yun saw that Sai Yu was being neglected and felt a little embarrassed, so she also greeted him. There were only 3 people, but it was very lively. In the end, the 3 of them finished all the food on the table, and all of them ate until their stomachs were round. The 2 adults still cared about their image, but they had a lazy expression. Wen rubbed her stomach like a kitten. She was so happy. They rested for a while before returning to their room. Sai Yu chatted with Fu Yun Ruo. Will we go home after filming tomorrow? Yes. Do you want to go on a trip? To avoid the heat. Sai Yu glanced at Wen, who was walking with a bulging stomach. This little guy hasn't been to the beach yet, right? The weather in the capital was the hottest time of the year. In the past, if Sai Yu was not filming at this time, he would basically go home to avoid the heat. Fu Yun was a little hesitant. Wen had lived in the countryside with her for the past 4 years. This year, they came to the capital only to have fun nearby. They had not even been to the tourist areas in the nearby cities, let alone the beach. She really wanted to bring Wen out to broaden her horizons. Wen was very happy to be able to go out with her mother, but when she saw that Sai Yu wanted to follow, she immediately said, I'll go with Mom. Sai Yu said slowly, a weak woman with a child outside will easily become a target for bad people. Wen was not convinced. I can protect Mom. You. Sai Yu glanced at him, her eyes full of doubt. Wen looked at his small body. All right, he was not very persuasive. He was instantly discouraged and snorted. I'll grow up very quickly. Fu Yun did not immediately nod. We'll talk about it later. If they were going to avoid the heat, where would they go? For a few days. How would they go? These were all problems, and he couldn't just leave like that. Wen said, the movie will be officially released in a week. Wen looked up at Fu Yun with bright eyes. Although he was very willing to go out to play, he could do it at any time. If he missed the opportunity to watch the movie, he would miss it. Between the two, Watching the movie was naturally more important. Fu Yun also remembered this matter when she heard this. They wanted to watch the movie as soon as it was released. A week's time would not be very far. Hey! No, there should be cinemas in the coastal cities in the country, right? She almost got tricked by Wen Wen. Wen Wen said, "Mom, let's go again next time." Wen Wen made a face at Sai Yu. It was not what he wanted. Sai Yu smiled and said, "Indeed, I didn't think it through. Wen Wen has just started learning. If he slacks off, he will probably have learned for nothing." Wen Wen was extremely indignant. He did not have the memory of a goldfish. How could he forget what he had learned? He would not learn for nothing. Seeing this, Fu Yun did not mention going on a vacation anymore. Just as they stepped out of the elevator, Sai Yu received a call. After listening to what the other party said, he only said calmly, "I'll have a video conference in 5 minutes." Fu Yun looked over curiously. Sai Yu hung up the phone and said to Fu Yun, "There's something at the company. I'll go and settle it first." Fu Yun nodded. Then, Sai Yu returned to his suite. Fu Yun and Wen Wen also entered the room. Fu Yun was very curious. She only knew that Sai Yu had always been the pillar of Apple Entertainment. He did not set up his own studio. She did not know that he had a company. Did he start it himself? She finally knew what Sai Yu was doing when he was not filming. He must be starting a business. Fu Yun thought back to the original novel. After Sai Yu left the entertainment industry, there was no news of him. It seemed that he must have succeeded in starting a business and became the CEO. Then, he left the entertainment industry. It was not convenient to take a walk outside the hotel. Fortunately, the 5-star suite was spacious enough. Fu Yun brought Wen Wen to walk around the room. Then, she began to make video calls to Uncle Guo and Aunt Mai. A day passed just like that. Today was Wen Wen's last day on set. His scenes were completed. The production crew still had to prepare a banquet for Wen Wen, but Fu Yun politely rejected it. Last time, Wen Wen's scenes were quite important. He was considered one of the important supporting roles. It was also Wen Wen's first film. It was understandable that they specially prepared a banquet for him. However, in this production crew, Wen Wen could only be considered as a minor supporting role. He appeared more in the early stages of the movie. Later on, there were some flashbacks. It was unknown if the edited scenes were more than 5 minutes long. Because this was a xianxia drama with the female lead, the male lead did not have as many scenes as the female lead. Because they worked well together, Fu Yun did not want to cause trouble for them. The director looked at Sai Yu and Fu Yun and asked for their opinion. "We want Wen Wen to film this scene with a wire. Is that okay?" The male lead was the disciple of the sect leader of an immortal sect. He was very talented and knew how to fly on a sword at a young age. This scene of a little fairy child's immortal aura was what made the little female lead remember it in her heart and made her determined to cultivate immortality. Because Wen Wen acted very well, the director subconsciously raised his expectations. He hoped that Wen Wen could film this scene. However, he also knew that adults might not be able to overcome the fear of being suspended in mid-air, let alone film it naturally. Wen Wen was still a child. Moreover, there was a certain degree of danger in hanging from a wire, so the director first asked for the adults' opinions. Fu Yun rejected it at first. Even if she had never acted before, she had eyes to see. This was a xianxia drama. There were many people hanging from wires and flying around. Even if they did not complain, after being suspended in mid-air for half a day, they walked a little unnaturally after coming down. Fu Yun accidentally saw an 18-year-old girl secretly crying. Filming was also very tiring. Fu Yun thought that Wen Wen was still so young and tender. Wouldn't it be even more uncomfortable to be strangled by a wire? Just thinking about it made her heart ache. "Mom, I want to film it," Wen Wen said firmly. "It will be very painful and tiring, okay? I'm not afraid." He was mentally prepared. In his previous life, he had hung from wires countless times. Sometimes, he would be suspended in mid-air for a few days. His thighs would be bruised and worn until they bled. However, he wanted to make every role he filmed perfect. Sai Yu did not express any opinions on this. Whether when agreed or not, he would agree. However, this kid made him think even more highly of him. He was willing to endure hardships at such a young age. He did not know if he would cry when he was done hanging. In the end, under Wenwen's insistence, Fu Yun had no choice but to compromise. However, she asked the crew to check the wires again and again to see if there were any problems. Then, she borrowed soft cushions from others. Before filming began, Fu Yun was still worried and went to see the props team to check the equipment. The props master in charge of the wires was a simple and honest middle-aged man. He checked again and said, "Miss Fu, don't worry. Our props are from a big brand with the best quality. There has never been a problem." As the crew had sufficient funds, the director was rich and bought all the props and equipment. This was the most frequently used pressure, and it was the most important thing. Fu Yun smiled at the middle-aged man. "Of course I'm very assured. However, I won't feel at ease if I don't see it with my own eyes." She had heard that there had been many pressure accidents. It could be said that she was worrying too much. However, she would not feel at ease if she did not check it with her own eyes. Just the thought of when being hung in midair made her feel very uneasy. The middle-aged man expressed his understanding. After all, it was his son who was hanging from the wire, so he had to be more careful. He explained to Fu Yun as he checked. Finally, he said to Fu Yun, "It's all fine. Thank you." After Fu Yun confirmed that there was no problem, she thanked him sincerely. Then, she turned around and walked over to the crew, preparing to watch it personally. Just as Fu Yun left, a young man wearing a black hat walked over from the corner. "Was that Miss Fu?" "Yes. Where did you go just now?" the middle-aged man asked curiously. The young man was also a props master. He could be said to be the middle-aged man's assistant. He had not seen him for a long time and did not know where he had gone. The young man clutched his stomach and said with an ugly expression, "I just went to the toilet and had diarrhea." Seeing this, the middle-aged man asked with concern, "Are you all right now? Do you want to go back and rest?" "Don't worry, I won't deduct your salary today." "No, there's no need." The young man refused. Then, he said warmly, "Big brother, you've worked hard just now. Go and rest for a while. I'll take care of this. I guarantee that there won't be any problems." The middle-aged man naturally trusted him. The two of them had worked together for so long, and the young man had never made any mistakes. Coincidentally, he was thirsty and there was no one in the water bottle. Hence, he instructed the young man to stay close to him before taking his own water bottle to get some water. After the young man watched the middle-aged man leave, his gaze landed on the wire and his eyes flashed. Chapter 106. When Fu Yun went over, the director was explaining to Wen in detail how to shoot the scene later. If they could get it done in one take, they wouldn't have to suffer so much. Wen's little face was serious, and he nodded from time to express his understanding. After a while, the director ordered the set to be set up and all the actors were ready. Wen stood at the side and waited for the staff to tighten the wire for him. Fu Yun watched from the side and couldn't help but ask, "It won't be very high, right?" The director said, it won't be. It'll be at most 3 to 4 meters high." Sai Yu saw that Fu Yun was so nervous and comforted her. It's normal to be attached to a wire when filming. There will be more dangerous things in the future, such as jumping off cliffs, jumping from tall buildings, driving cars, and so on. Although other people usually used a stunt double, Sai Yu never used a stunt double. He felt that Wen wouldn't use a stunt double in the future either, so he just had to get used to it. Fu Yun heard this and couldn't help but look at him silently. "Don't say anything if you don't know how to comfort people." His words made her even more worried. If Wen experienced so many dangerous things, she wouldn't be able to sleep, okay? Sai Yu. Actually, there weren't many opportunities like this. Everything was ready and all the actors were in place. The onlookers walked out and made way for the filming space to prevent the camera from filming unrelated people. Then, they started to shoot the scene. Fu Yun watched from the side. She didn't know how to act, but she could see that Wen, who was filming, was completely immersed in the role. It made people feel that he was a character in the drama. No wonder the director thought so highly of Wen. Some people were born to be in this bowl of rice. The wire lifted Wen up slowly from a low altitude until it stopped at a height of 3 meters. Wen had been pampered for many years and was no longer the person who had suffered so much in her previous life. He realized that he had become weak. When he was lifted up just now, he only felt that his body was very tight and he felt very uncomfortable all over. The first time, he wasn't prepared and didn't control his expression well. The director shouted cut and then quickly put him down. Fu Yun couldn't help but run over. Wen was disappointed that he failed on his first try, but he still comforted her. "Mom, I'm fine." Fu Yunruo wanted to say that they should stop filming. Her heart ached when she saw Wen, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Sai Yu pulled Fu Yunruo's hand and said, "Let's go." From the moment the wire pulled him up, he was the disciple of the immortal sect's master, a true genius. The gentle wind lifted him up. The moment he flew forward, his pure white daoist robe fluttered, and he looked like an immortal descending. Even if the protagonist was a child, everyone present was subdued by his aura. After Wen finished his lines, the director was silent for a moment and shouted cut. He was extremely excited. He never expected that Wen would perform so well. This scene was really great. It would definitely become a classic. The director looked at the return interview excitedly. Wen was hanging up and didn't hear the director speak. He didn't know if it had passed. He turned his head to look and his small body swayed. Fu Yun had been paying attention to Wen. Although she was also mesmerized by the scene just now, she was more concerned about Wen, so she quickly came back to her senses. She saw that Wen had been hanging up and his small body was uncomfortable. She quickly shouted, "Quickly put Wen down." Only then did the others react. "Yes, quickly put him down." However, before the middle-aged man could start, one of the steel wires hanging on Wen suddenly broke. Wen's body tilted and his entire body swayed. The other steel wires also broke quickly. The small person accidentally knocked over a fallen flower pot on the balcony and fell straight down. Fu Yun's pupils suddenly constricted. She was so frightened that she stopped breathing and her mind went blank. She ran over like the wind and instantly appeared below Wen with her hands open. However, in the next moment, a pair of hands pushed Fu Yun away. The person behind her took her position and raised his hands to steady himself to reduce the impact. There were 2 cracking sounds, as if they heard the sound of bones breaking. At the same time, the tall body was also brought down by the remaining impact and fell to the ground with a thud. This happened in an instant. The others didn't react at all and were stunned by this unforeseen event. "Ah!" Someone suddenly screamed, breaking the silence in an instant. "Ah ah ah!" Some of the timid staff and actors screamed one after another. The scene was in chaos. Fu Yun fell to the side and sat down. Her mind was blank as if she had lost her soul. She didn't react at all. Although he used his hands to reduce the impact, the heavy weight hit his chest. Sai Yu coughed twice and spat out a mouthful of blood. The bodyguards who were outside reacted faster and quickly ran over. Sai Yu's face was pale and he immediately ordered, "Seal the scene. Even flies are not allowed to enter." "Ambulance." Then, he didn't say anything else. The bodyguards contacted the outside and quickly controlled the scene. The director also quickly reacted and was very cooperative. Everyone present was not allowed to move and all mobile phones were confiscated. Fu Yun's body went soft. She stared blankly at the big and small person smashed together. Her teeth were chattering and she was extremely frightened. When discovered that the steel wires had broken, he realized that something was wrong. However, all the steel wires broke too quickly and he didn't have time to remind her. When he fell, he thought that his mother would definitely be sad. If something happened to him, Sai Yu would still be with his mother. When closed his eyes and waited for the pain to come. However, when he felt that he had landed, he realized that although his body was in pain, he didn't lose consciousness. The ground wasn't soft, but it was warm. When opened his eyes and saw a thick chest very close. Only then did he realize that he was being protected tightly. He had been caught by someone. And the person who had caught him despite the danger was Sai-yu, Mom. Wen muttered. Fu-yun quivered and her consciousness returned. She reached out her trembling hand and didn't dare to touch him. How could this be? She had been very careful to check him again. Why did this happen? When? Sai-yu, Fu-yun couldn't stop trembling. Ruo, don't be afraid. We're fine. Sai-yu tried his best to comfort her. He knew that he must have scared Fu-yun. Fu-yun tried her best to stay rational. Help. Ambulance, she wanted to help, but she knew that people with internal injuries couldn't move their bodies freely. Fu-yun didn't dare to touch them. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. Yuan Shin rushed over with the other bodyguards. He happened to be nearby and the bodyguards contacted him immediately. At the same time, the ambulance also arrived. More than 10 medical staff carried stretchers and rushed over. They first gave the two of them first aid. There were also doctors who came with them. They only felt relieved after confirming that the patients' lives weren't in danger. However, it was still not optimistic. They moved Wen onto the stretcher very professionally and carefully. Then, they carried Sai-yu onto another stretcher and left quickly. Fu-yun finally regained her strength and left with the stretcher. Before leaving, Fu-yun looked at Yuan Shin. Brother Yuan? Yuan Shin promised. Leave this to me. After Yuan Shin confirmed that their lives weren't in danger, he stayed behind to deal with the aftermath. First, he had to confirm whether this was an accident or man-made. The director was worried. I don't know why this happened either. Don't worry, I'll definitely give you an explanation. Yuan Shin's face was cold and he didn't say anything. The bodyguards were professional in their investigation. They quickly found out that the wires were damaged by someone. Then, they quickly sorted out the relevant personnel who had come into contact with the wire equipment. The middle-aged man still couldn't believe it. His face was pale. How could this happen? How could this happen? He had checked again and again and confirmed it clearly. The bodyguards interrogated and quickly found the suspect. It was the middle-aged man's assistant. After they checked, he was the only one who had come into contact with the wire equipment. However, when the middle-aged man returned with water, he said that he had a stomachache and went to the washroom. But the bodyguards had already checked and found that he was no longer in the washroom. It was obvious that he had escaped. When the director heard this, his face became extremely ugly. Their production team had been going smoothly, but something like this had happened. Yuan Shin said, "Call the police." When the director heard this, he immediately looked bitter. This, calling the police, will affect the production team. Why don't we settle it privately? Yuan Shin said coldly, this is already murder. How can we settle it privately? They were lucky this time. If they were unlucky, it would be 2 lives. If anything happened to these 2 people, the sky would collapse. The news won't leak out. The director smiled bitterly. Although Yuan Shin said that, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Even though the internet blocked the news of Sai-yu and Wen, the news of a certain production team being suspected of having an accident still caused a stir. Everyone sought confirmation. However, no one in the production team came out to explain, which confirmed this rumor. And Fu-yun and Wen's fans all knew that Wen had filmed another movie and was in this production team. When they heard that something had happened, how could they not be anxious? What had happened? Who was in trouble? Why didn't anyone come out to clarify? The rumors on the internet were strange and variegated, and they even made it to the hot searches. But there was no news about Wen. Fu-yun and the others did not have time to pay attention to the news on the internet. The ambulance that came this time was private, and the whole process was very confidential. Fu-yun followed into the ambulance. The interior of the ambulance was very spacious, and there was a lot of equipment. It could be said to be a small operating theater. Sai-yu's face was calm. If not for his pale face, no one would be able to tell that he was injured. How's the child? The child is fine. The doctor wearing a mask obviously knew Sai-yu. He pressed a few times on Sai-yu and the others and clicked his tongue. You'd better worry about yourself first. Fu Yun heard the doctor say that Wen's problem was not serious, so she was relieved at first. But when she heard the last sentence, her heart jumped. How's Mr. Yu? Wen was restrained on another bed and could not move at all. She blinked her eyes and tried her best to turn her head to look over. She was silent and concerned. The doctor looked at Sai Yu and then at the anxious woman with red eyes. He said meaningfully, it's serious. However, before he could exaggerate, he received a warning glance from Sai Yu. Chapter 107. Fu Yunruo did not notice the sharp glances between Sai Yu and the doctor. She looked at the doctor nervously and fearfully, afraid that he would say something she did not want to hear. The doctor pursed his lips and then said to Fu Yunruo seriously, 2 of his ribs are broken and both of his hands are dislocated. However, his injuries are not serious and his life is not in danger. Otherwise, he would not be so calm and even want to see his employer make a fool of himself. Unfortunately, his employer's rare joke was not good. Sai Yu said, I'm fine, don't worry. Fu Yunruo's tears fell drop by drop. Don't cry, the child needs you. Fu Yunruo wiped her tears and looked at Wen in a panic. He was frightened and needed her the most. She had to be strong. Wen Ruo did not have any obvious injuries on his body, but he fell from a high place and his internal organs were shocked. He also suffered some internal injuries. The little person was lying on the small white bed and could not move. He looked pitiful. Mommy. Wen called out softly. His face was also a little pale. Mommy is here. Fu Yunruo held Wen's little hand tightly. Her cold palm warmed up after a while. The ambulance stopped at the entrance of a hospital and entered from another side door. Then, it went directly into the operating room. Sai Yu suffered some internal injuries. Fortunately, the broken ribs did not poke into his internal organs. Although Sai Yu felt a little uncomfortable and felt pain when he breathed, it was not unbearable. During this period, Sai Yu did not faint. It was not obvious on his face, but in fact, he was suffering. He only felt better when he entered the operating room and was anesthetized. Wen also entered the operating room. His whole body had to be checked carefully. Fu Yunruo stayed outside alone and waited for them. She stood in the corridor and felt a chill from the bottom of her feet. It was so cold that she could not help but hug herself tightly. There were not many people in the corridor. There were only a few medical staff walking back and forth from time to time. There were only 1 or 2 patients. However, when the patient saw her, he only took a few more glances and did not go forward to disturb her. This was a private hospital that was famous for its exorbitant fees, highly skilled doctors, and strong privacy. It had always been a place where rich people came to when they were sick. Along the way, they did not meet any outsiders. Fu Yun stood straight in the corridor, and no one came forward to disturb her. After a long while, Fu Yun's slow brain finally started to work. She could not figure out how an accident could have happened. Was there a problem with the prop master? She obviously didn't feel any malice from him. Perhaps it was because one couldn't judge a book by its cover. She had seen with her own eyes that there was no problem with the props master's careful inspection. With the weight of Wen's small body, it was impossible for so many steel wires to be broken. It was obviously abnormal. If Fu Yun could guess, the wire must have been maliciously damaged after she left. Even if it was not the prop master, he knew who was the suspect. Thinking of this, Fu Yunruo quickly called Yuan Xin. The phone was picked up as soon as it rang, and Yuan Xin's concerned voice came over. Yunruo, is there a situation with Sai Yu? No, Mr. Yu is still in the operating room. Fu Yunruo's voice was low, but she still remembered the reason why she called. I want to tell you that even if the prop master did not do it, he still has some clues. The wire must have been damaged after I left. Fu Yunruo told Yuan Xin everything that happened before and after the accident without any details, as she was afraid that she would miss out on a single detail. Yuan Xin listened to her and said, Don't worry, we have already found the culprit and are looking for him now. You can stay in the hospital at ease. Leave this matter to me. Yuan Shin's voice was very calm, and inexplicably comforted Fu Yunruo's uneasy heart. When she heard that the culprit was confirmed, she immediately asked, "Who is it?" Yuan Shin said a name, but Fu Yunruo had never heard of it before. However, Yuan Shin said that he had already sent people to investigate this person. They did not believe it. If there was no one behind this, how could a total stranger do such a heinous thing? Yuan Shin had already sent people to investigate, and he believed that the results would be found soon. "Thank you for your hard work, Yuan Ge. This is what I should do. I will go to the hospital after I am done with the things here." Okay. With such a big thing happening, there needed to be someone outside to take charge. Yuan Shin was the most suitable person, so no matter how worried he was, he suppressed his anxiety and stayed outside. His temper had been calm for too long, so long that people had forgotten his methods. Daring to make a move on his artiste, did he have 9 lives to squander? Fu Yunruo did not know that a storm was brewing outside, as this hospital seemed to be isolated from the outside world. After Fu Yunruo hung up the phone, her mind kept replaying the scene, and she felt a burst of fear in her heart. Fortunately, the position of the wire was not too high, but for a child with a tender body, if she fell from this height, even if she did not die, she would be crippled. Fu Yunruo had seen many news reports. There were countless cases of objects falling from high altitudes and people jumping off buildings to smash passers-by to death. If it was very high, not to mention when, even Sai Yu could be. Fu Yunruo felt a chill when she thought of this. The other party was obviously targeting when or targeting her. In this world, she had always been kind to others and had never made enemies with anyone, except for the male and female leads in the original work. Fu Yunruo's first thought was that they were the most suspicious people behind the scenes. If something happened to Wen, it would be more painful than killing her. She would never be able to forgive herself for the rest of her life and would be trapped in guilt and regret. Fu Yunruo's attitude towards them had always been to avoid them as much as possible. She did not want to have too much interaction with them and only wanted to lead her own life. But today's matter had touched her bottom line. If they were really found to be related to this matter, she would not let them off. Wen was the first to come out. Fu Yunruo went over immediately and saw that Wen's eyes were closed. He did not react when he was pushed out. Fu Yunruo's heart skipped a beat and her face instantly turned pale. When, the doctor who followed them out explained in time, "The child is asleep. It's not a big deal. He doesn't have a concussion. He only has minor internal injuries. He needs to rest for a period of time. Don't do strenuous exercise or jump around." Wen was still young. He had suffered and was frightened. His body instinctively protected him. After all the checks were done, he had already fallen asleep. However, he did not seem to be sleeping well. His little brows were furrowed subconsciously. Fu Yunruo nodded repeatedly. She looked at Wen without blinking. Wen was pushed out by the medical staff. Fu Yunruo was not at ease. She looked at the operating theater that was still lit up and then looked at Wen. She hesitated for a moment before following them. They went to a high-class VIP ward. The medical staff carefully moved Wen to the bed and laid him down. There were also 2 medical staff who were on standby at any time. Fu Yunruo watched for a while and was sure that Wen would not wake up for a while. There were also nurses in the ward by the side. Hence, she walked out and went to the operating theater again. When Sai Yu came out of the operating theater, the effect of the anesthetic had not worn off. No matter how strong his willpower was, he could not hold on any longer and had already fallen asleep. Fu Yunruo saw that Sai Yu had changed into a plain hospital gown. His hands were fixed in plaster and his body was wrapped in elastic bandages. Fu Yunruo's eyes immediately turned red. "Doctor, how is he? Was he sure that he was not seriously injured?" Fu Yunruo was relieved because Sai Yu had been awake the whole time and the doctor said that his injuries were not serious. Looking at this, how could his injuries not be serious? The doctor explained in all seriousness, his joints have been reset, but he needs to recuperate well. He can't carry heavy objects or move his hands vigorously for the next 2 to 3 years. His ribs have been reset through surgery and his internal organs have been injured. He needs to rest for at least half a year to recover. Sai Yu had been awake the whole time and had relied on his strong willpower to support himself. 4 joints in his hands had been dislocated and were severely strained. His internal injuries were not light either. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been in so much pain that he would have fainted on his own. However, Sai Yu did not want his child and his mother to worry, so he forced himself to hold on. The doctor did not have any intention of covering up for Sai Yu. After slightly exaggerating his injuries, he even sighed. When Fu Yunruo heard this, she felt guilty, grateful, and sad. Her eyes turned red again. If Sai Yu did not run out to replace her, he would not have been injured. Sai Yu did it to save her, and when this was also the first time that Fu Yunruo realized that she had the potential to be a sprint champion. She did not know how she ran over in 1 or 2 seconds. She also did not know that Sai Yu would come over in such a timely manner. Wen was her child, so she did not hesitate to protect her child. What about Sai Yu? Fu Yunruo could not help but believe that in Sai Yu's heart, when Wen and her were so important that he would risk his own safety to protect them, Sai Yu was sent to the VIP ward. When Fu Yunruo looked up, she found it familiar. She even saw the medical staff in the room. Wasn't this Wen's ward? This VIP ward was more than 100 square meters. There was also another room. Perhaps it was usually used to accompany the ward, but it did not affect its use. Very quickly, it was tidied up for Sai Yu to stay in. Rounding up, they were staying in the same ward. Fu Yunruo did not have any objections. She felt that it was better for them to stay together. It would be more convenient for her to take care of Sai Yu together. An adult and a child lay in the room with an 4 drip on their hands. There were medical staff paying attention to them. Fu Yunruo looked at this one moment and then looked at that one moment. At this moment, she also noticed that this ward did not look like a ward. Not to mention that it was spacious. If she had not been in the hospital all this time, she would have thought that she was staying in someone's house. This house looked like a normal house. The overall color was not pure white. Instead, it was very indifferent and comfortable gray. It was matched with warm, soft clothes. There was a large screen television hanging on one side of the wall. There was also a sofa and a coffee table. She did not know that the hospital had such a ward, but at least it looked more comfortable. Staying in such a ward to recuperate made her feel less depressed. Wen did not sleep well. His consciousness seemed to have returned to his previous life. He stood at the edge of the rooftop of a tall building and looked down. In the distance, there was an endless stream of traffic. He was as small as an ant. The wind was not gentle, and it made him sway. At that time, he was like a rat crossing the street. Everyone wanted to beat him up. He had a bad reputation and had nothing. He was deserted by everyone. Those who were unwilling to stay away from him and betrayed his close friends were implicated by him and did not have a good ending. Some died, some were injured, and some were forced to go abroad and never returned. At that time, he always thought that if he was no longer around, his friends would not be targeted anymore. He resented the injustice in this world. He resented those who forced him to go to this point. The invisible wind whistled past his ears. A strong sense of weightlessness came over him. The little person on the bed suddenly opened his eyes. Wen panted lightly. His large eyes were filled with deep depression. Baby. Fu Yunruo had just come out of Sai Yu's room when she heard movement from the bed. She hurriedly ran over. Baby, you're awake. Fu Yunruo noticed the fine sweat on his forehead. Her heart ached as she wiped the sweat for him. Did you have a nightmare? Don't be afraid. Mummy's here. Mummy's here. Fu Yunruo carefully hugged Wen and kept comforting him. Wen lay in Fu Yunruo's arms. He was surrounded by a familiar aura. His eyes slowly regained their clarity. Mummy. Wen's voice was a little hoarse. He looked up at Fu Yunruo and could not help but hug her with both hands. He buried his head in her shoulders. Wen lowered his eyelashes to hide the emotions in his eyes. He muttered a few times. Fu Yunruo responded every time. Wen clenched Fu Yunruo's small hand tightly. Because he had a chance to start over, he did not resent the injustice of the heavens. All the disasters in his previous life had not happened yet. He still had the chance to prevent all the disasters from happening. In this life, even if those annoying people were jumping around, they had not done those things in this life. At most, he had only expressed his displeasure and did not do anything. He thought that he had to be a good child. Moreover, he had always been under his mummy's eyes. He did not dare to do anything bad. He did not want his mummy to be disappointed in him. He never thought that they would want his life. Wen thought that since this was the case, they could not blame him. Mummy, where's Uncle Yu? Wen restrained the emotions in his eyes. He thought of Sai Yu who had always protected him. His heart was even more complicated. He did not expect that Sai Yu would disregard the danger to save him. Because he did not appear in his previous life, the awkwardness caused him to waver. In the past, he had walked into a dead end. Even if he knew that he could not be blamed, he could not help but feel resentful. If he had appeared, would the ending be different? Perhaps he could have lived a happy life like this in his previous life. Wen kept thinking about what his mummy had explained to him. He did not know of their existence, so he did not appear. If he knew, he would definitely come to find them. It could only be said that his previous life was a mistake due to a combination of factors. In his previous life, he had no parents. Then in this life, with his mummy's love and daddy's love, wouldn't he be happier? Could it be that he had to wait until he lost them before he regretted it? Wen thought of the dazzling pool of blood he saw when he looked up. His small body could not help but tremble. He's in the next room. Fu Yunruo hugged Wen and comforted him. Wen looked up. His big watery eyes looked at Fu Yunruo. I want to see him, okay. Fu Yunruo carefully carried Wen and walked to the next room. Uncle Yu has just finished his surgery and is resting. Let's be careful. Take a look. Before Fu Yunruo could finish speaking, she saw that the person who was originally sleeping on the bed had already sat up with the help of the medical staff. His back was leaning against the soft cushion. Mr. Yu, you're awake. Fu Yunruo was pleasantly surprised. She walked over and asked with concern, does your body still hurt? Do you want the doctor to come over and give you a painkiller? Fu Yunruo looked at the plaster bandages. His heart was throbbing with pain. No need, I'm fine. The effect of the anesthesia was slowly wearing off. Sai Yu felt the pain all over his body, but he could still endure it. There was nothing unusual on his face. Sai Yu's eyes were smiling. He looked at Wen. Seeing that he was not energetic, there was nothing wrong with his body, so he asked about Wen's injuries again. Fu Yunruo repeated the doctor's words in detail. Wen's eyes were fixed on Sai Yu. Seeing the bandages on his body, he felt extremely uncomfortable. Sai Yu saw that Wen was looking at him and could not help but ask, Wen, come over and let me hug you. Although the little guy was fine, Sai Yu really wanted to hug him. Wen stayed in Fu Yunruo's arms, hesitating and not moving. Sai Yu subconsciously wanted to raise his head, but his hands were fixed in the plaster. Moving for a long time would cause a heart-wrenching pain. Fu Yunruo quickly said, don't move. She lowered her head and looked at Wen. She carried him over and carefully placed him on the bed. Sai Yu looked at Wen. His voice was low and weak. I can't move my hands. Wen, come over and hug me, okay? Wen sat by the bed. He looked at Sai Yu and hesitated for a while. Then, he slowly moved over and took the initiative to gently lean against Sai Yu's side. Because Sai Yu's body and hands were in plaster and bandages, Wen did not dare to press on him. Hence, he leaned against him gently. Even so, Sai Yu was already very satisfied. This was the first time Wen had been so close to him. Wen leaned against him and did not say a word. Fu Yunruo looked at the adult and child. She did not know why, but she suddenly felt sad. However, this heartwarming scene did not last long and was quickly broken. Yuan Xin came to the hospital with a large group of people. Ruo, where is Wen? How are his injuries? Uncle Guo deliberately lowered his voice but could not hide his anxiety. He walked in front and saw Wen leaning against Sai Yu. He quickly went over. Wen, my dear, where are you injured? Fu Yunruo looked around and saw the large group of people. She was stunned. Why are all of you here? Tian said, how can we not come over when such a big thing happened? Are you all okay? Not only did Uncle Guo and Tian come, but Qian Shengnan and Kai Wei Cheng also came. If it weren't for the fact that there were people at the flower garden, Uncle Zhong and the rest would have come too. Tian and the rest heard the news immediately and immediately confirmed it with Yuan Xin. Tian was in charge of Fu Yunruo's studio and worked closely with Yuan Xin's team. Yuan Xin did not hide it and told Tian the truth. When Tian heard that Wen had fallen from a high place, how could she sit still? After helping to control the public opinion online, she asked for the hospital's address and rushed over. As for Uncle Guo, it was Kai Wei Cheng who spread the news. Kai Wei Cheng only dared to tell the teacher after confirming that Wen's injuries were not serious. Otherwise, he would definitely have kept it a secret. When Uncle Guo heard that Wen was injured, he immediately put down what he was doing and asked Kai Wei Cheng to send him over. When Fu Yunruo saw that Uncle Guo had also come, she looked at Brother Kai disapprovingly. Uncle Guo was old and could not be agitated. What if something happened to him? Grandpa Guo. Wen saw Uncle Guo and called out listlessly. Uncle Guo's heart ached. Wen. Grandpa Guo, don't worry. I'm fine. It's Uncle Yu. Uncle Guo's gaze shifted to Sai Yu. He had just saved Wen's life. Uncle Guo could not pull a long face and tried to maintain a kind and benevolent expression. Thank you for protecting Wen. Sai Yu smiled and said, this is what I should do. Uncle Guo immediately pulled a long face and stopped talking to him. He lowered his head and asked about Wen's well-being. The ward was bustling with noise and excitement. Fu Yunruo was busy comforting his relatives and friends. In the end, in order not to disturb Sai Yu's rest, everyone moved away. Fu Yunruo carried Wen out. They sat outside and talked softly. Wen was already sticking to Fu Yunruo's side. Fu Yunruo was now afraid of losing Wen. Only by carrying Wen would he feel safe. He did not mind his weight and carried him wherever he went. When he was tired, he would sit on the sofa. Fu Yunruo only dared to carry him all the time after confirming with the doctor. His injuries required rest, but as long as he did not move too much, he would be fine. Wen stayed in Fu Yunruo's arms and did not move at all. It was no different from lying on the bed. Wen was also afraid of leaving his mother. Everyone else came out. Yuan Xin did not follow them out. Instead, he pulled out a stool and sat by the bed. He looked like he was going to have a long talk. He reported the results of the investigation to Sai Yu. Sai Yu's subordinates were very outstanding. Yuan Xin used them to investigate this time and found out the cause and effect in half a day. As expected, it was the young man who had run away. They caught him at a bus station. Fortunately, they arrived in time. Otherwise, he would have run away. At first, the man refused to admit it, but not long after, they managed to pry open his mouth. They checked the man's life and all of his bank accounts. There was no abnormal cash flow in his account, and he had not come into contact with strangers. It seemed like he had no motive, but this person was Fang Shue's fanatic. He saw Fang Shue as his goddess and mingled in forums and groups of all sizes. Ever since the news spread in the group that his goddess had been banned because she had offended someone, he had been cursing the person who hurt his goddess. In his opinion, his goddess was very good. However, Fu Yunruo dared to be dissatisfied. He felt that Fang Shueruo had been wronged in the Fu family. The Fu family had such a good person like Fang Shueruo. It was the Fu family's good fortune. Wasn't it natural for the young master of the Chang family to like their goddess? If Fu Yun knew what was good for him, he would obediently give up his position. When he found out that his goddess's reputation had been ruined because of this woman and she had been banned, he resented this woman for appearing again. She had disappeared not long ago. He vented his malice and dissatisfaction in the group with other fans. He even unscrupulously said 100 ways to hurt them. Finally, a stranger contacted him. He said that he was also Fang Shuiruo's fan and that he was close to Fang Shuiruo. He also said a lot of insider information that was not available online. The man did not believe his identity at first. Later, he gradually dispelled his doubts and regarded him as a confidant. Later, he had the opportunity to join the crew and saw the person he hated the most. He could not help but complain to his confidant. If something happens to the child, she should be in a lot of pain, right? This sentence gave the man an idea. He had been waiting for an opportunity to make a move, but he never found the opportunity. He did not expect that on the last day, he would finally have the opportunity to make a move. That was how things happened. In reality, he was a shy young man. Who would have thought that he would be crazy online? Yuan Xin was interrogated for a long time, but he did not find out who his confidant was. He did not know the other party's identity. He logged into his account to check on this person, but found that this person was no longer there. Chapter 108. After Yuan Xin told Sai Yu the results of their investigation, Sai Yu's face turned icy cold. His eyes flashed coldly. He had been too careless. Originally, he thought that it would be enough to shut Fang Shui out of the entertainment industry and make the Chang family withdraw from the entertainment industry. Now, it seemed that he had been too kind. The Chang family had always supported Fang Shui. If he wanted to make her disappear from the entertainment industry, he had to make her support disappear as well. The Fu family was Fu Yunruo's original family after all, and that blood relationship could not be broken. Therefore, he turned a blind eye to the Fu family when he saw that the Fu family did not step forward to provide Fang Shuiruo with resources. Now that they did not explicitly support Fang Shuiruo, he turned a blind eye to the Fu family. As for the Chang family, he had been slowly weakening their position. He had just seen results, but now, it seemed that he had been too slow. As for why he didn't let the Chang family break off the engagement and stop them from being Fang Shui's support. Sai Yu felt that the internet had always been right. They were a match made in heaven and should be bound together forever. He would rather destroy 10 temples than break up a marriage. He was such a conscientious person. Of course, he was worried that Chang Zhuyu would pester Fu Yun after he broke off the engagement. Now that Fang Shui's resources were mainly provided by the Chang family, she would disappear completely once the Chang family fell. Sai Yu said, Fang Shui wasn't the one who did this. She must have something to do with it. Find evidence in the next 2 days. As long as it's confirmed that she has something to do with it, make it up even if you don't have evidence. As for the person who did it, sue him according to the law and punish him severely. This was murder, and it was done to a child. It was too horrible. Sai Yu didn't arrange for too many bodyguards because the child was always under his watch and her identity hadn't been exposed. After this incident, he should arrange for more bodyguards. Oh right, there are many opinions out there. Should we continue to suppress it? This matter had been suppressed by them and had not been exposed yet. However, this was something that would happen sooner or later. There were so many witnesses at the scene. Even if they all shut up, there would always be someone who would accidentally spill the beans. Now that all the media's attention was focused on the production team, the all-pervasive reporters would not let go of such an important piece of news. There were a lot of speculations on the internet and rumors had already spread. Even if it was to appease the fans, he had to report that he was safe. Sai Yu said faintly, there's no need to suppress it. They were the victims, so there was no need for them to spend so much effort to cover up for the perpetrator. This time, they had to make a scene, and the bigger the better. Yuan Xin's voice was calm. Don't worry, leave it to me. Fu Yunruo was comforting her relatives and friends outside. Wen hugged Fu Yun and leaned her head on her shoulder. She listened to the adults talk and soon fell asleep again. When Tian and the others saw this, they all took their leave and prepared to visit again tomorrow. Uncle Guo originally wanted to stay, but after being persuaded by Kai Wei Cheng and Fu Yunruo, he finally left. Fu Yunruo watched them leave. She hugged Wen, who had already fallen asleep and looked dependent, and could not bear to put her down. Wen did not sleep well just now. If she put her to sleep, what if she woke up quickly? When Fu Yunruo saw that Yuan Shin had not come out of the room, she wondered if he had already found out the truth. Fu Yunruo was hesitating whether to listen in when Yuan Shin came out of the room. "Brother Yuan." Before Fu Yunruo could ask, Yuan Shin had already said, "There is no clear evidence of the mastermind behind this, but we already have a clue." He did not hide it and directly said that it was Fang Shueruo's brainless fan who did such a crazy thing in the name of avenging her. Indeed, Fu Yunruo's guess was true, and Fang Shueruo was indeed involved. When she heard that someone had induced him to do it, Fu Yunruo also guessed that it was Fang Shueruo. However, she did not understand that if she let her brainless fan do it, the outside world would definitely link it to her. Was she so brainless? Perhaps this was what she wanted. In the name of being implicated by her fan, she abused her fan and made others sympathize with her. She also turned herself into a victim. Was she so confident that she would not be implicated? Was she sure that she had wiped her tail clean? After Yuan Shin finished explaining to Fu Yunruo, he quickly left. Fu Yunruo carried Wen and knocked on the door. When she heard Sai Yu's voice, she pushed the door open and entered. Sai Yu was still leaning against the cushion and looked at Fu Yunruo. Seeing that she kept carrying Wen, he said, "Why don't you put her to bed?" The little guy was not light, and it would be very tiring to carry her all the time. Fu Yunruo said softly, "I'm afraid that Wen will not be able to sleep well." Whether it was an adult or a child, if they were sick or injured, they would recover quickly by sleeping more. When Sai Yu saw Fu Yunruo's nervous look, he understood that not only was the child frightened, but even Fu Yunruo was also very frightened. She would only feel at ease when she carried the child. Hence, he said softly, "Why don't you put her on my bed and watch from the side?" With them by her side, Wen should be able to sleep well. Fu Yunruo hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she did not refuse. She carefully placed Wen on the side of the bed and covered her with a blanket. Wen lay on the bed and moved. Fu Yunruo gently comforted her and did not wake her up in the end. Fu Yunruo heaved a sigh of relief and sat on a stool at the side. Although this was a hospital bed, it was much bigger than a single bed in an ordinary hospital. Sai Yu's other bed was more than enough for Wen to sleep on. Fu Yunruo looked at Wen attentively and pinched her arm. Only then did she feel that her arm was very sore and numb, but it was much better after a while. After a long time, she turned her gaze to Sai Yu. She noticed that his lips were a little dry and felt very apologetic. Then, she went to pour a cup of warm water for Sai Yu. Most of her attention was on Wen, but Sai Yu was on their hands, so she should not ignore him. "Drink some water," Fu Yunruo said. Sai Yu thanked her, then looked at Fu Yunruo and said, "You're going to feed me?" Fu Yunruo was stunned. Her gaze wandered around his hands that were in plaster, and she felt even more apologetic. "Sorry, I forgot." His hands could not move, so she had to pass him the cup. Fu Yunruo leaned over slightly and passed the cup to his lips. Sai Yu cooperated and drank half the cup. Fu Yunruo put the cup aside and asked softly, "Are there any nurses in the hospital? If you're like this, do you need to find a nurse for help?" Fu Yunruo was very worried. Now that his hands could not move, his body could not move, and there must be a lot of inconveniences in his life. He could not do without someone to take care of him. Sai Yu said, "I'm already looking for one." After all, he was still a public figure, so looking for a nurse was more cautious. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Before he could finish speaking, the doctor arrived. This doctor was the young doctor who had personally operated on Sai Yu. He had been wearing a mask previously, so Fu Yunruo did not pay attention to his appearance. She only heard that he sounded very young. Now that the other party had taken off his mask, his handsome face was revealed. He was indeed very young and looked to be in his early 30s. However, he looked a little familiar. "Hello, Miss Fu." The man gave Fu Yunruo a kind smile and greeted her warmly. "I've heard a lot about you." "Hello, thank you so much." "You're welcome." We have been friends with the Sai family for many generations. Moreover, it's the duty of a doctor to save lives and heal the injured. Fu Yunruo was right. No wonder this doctor seemed to be very familiar with Sai Yu and her. However, she was sure that she had not seen this person in her memory. Fu Yunruo looked at Sai Yu with a puzzled gaze. Sai Yu explained, his surname is Meng. You can call him Dr. Meng. When Fu Yunruo heard this surname, she quickly thought of Dr. Meng who had come to treat her when she was sick a few months ago. No wonder she felt that he looked familiar. Didn't he look a little similar to Dr. Meng? Very quickly, Fu Yunruo understood their relationship. This Dr. Meng was Dr. Meng's cousin. The Meng family had been in the medical field for generations and could be said to be a medical family. Everyone in the Meng family was in the medical field. Because of their family background, all of them had inherited the medical talent of the Meng family. Moreover, their primary education was medical books such as the Compendium of Materia Medica. Therefore, the children of the Meng family were all very outstanding in the medical field. Although this Dr. Meng was young, he was already a specialist and a chief physician. He was also an attending physician and had performed countless surgeries. Her cousin had gone overseas for an exchange and would not be back for a while. Therefore, when Sai Yu was in trouble, Dr. Meng Xiao was in charge. As for their relationship with the Sai family, they were already very close after a few generations. Everyone in the Meng family had extraordinary achievements in the medical field, but they did not have the talent for business. On the other hand, the Sai family had some businesses that involved medicine. Whether it was the top medical equipment, the pharmaceutical industry, or high-class private hospitals, they were all involved. Moreover, the Sai family had many top biological research institutes and many private territories that had naturally expensive medicinal herbs. They also had strong capital. The Meng family had been working with the Sai family for a long time, so it could be said to be a win-win situation. They would unconditionally support the Meng family's medical research and development, and the Meng family would serve the Sai family. In the Meng family, some worked in the Biological Genetic Research Institute, while others worked in the hospital. The Sai family was also very generous and gave the Meng family some shares in the research institutes and hospitals. The Meng family did not have to worry about money and could focus on medical research. The Sai family had a trusted medical team and did not have to worry about illness. Wasn't it a win-win situation? On the other hand, the Meng family had a daughter who married into the Sai family. Strictly speaking, they were still related by marriage. However, now that they were separated by 3 or 4 generations, the relationship was very thin. Of course, Fu Yun did not know about the deeper and more complicated relationship between the Meng family and Sai Yu. When she heard that Dr. Meng and Dr. Meng were cousins, she felt even more close. She was concerned and asked if he could help find a nurse and when would she come. Dr. Meng patted his head and said apologetically, "The hospital hasn't found a suitable one yet. You also know that he is a public figure. Most of the hospital's nurses are his fans. Female nurses are not suitable to take care of him. As for male nurses, the hospital doesn't have many of them. The best nurses have already been hired, and the remaining ones are Sai Yu's fans. Now that he is injured and weak, what if those male nurses want to do something to Sai Yu, don't you think so? These private hospitals specially hired a group of professional nurses to provide assistance to the patients when it was inconvenient for them to do so. Although the price was a little expensive, there was nothing to say about the professionalism. Those who understood the situation were too lazy to find other nurses who might not be suitable and directly let the hospital make the arrangements. When Fu Yun heard this, didn't she feel that everything was inappropriate? Then what should we do? The weather was so hot now. Wouldn't he have to wipe his body? Also, what if he needed to go to the washroom? Sai Yu needed a male nurse by his side now. Otherwise, Dr. Meng said seriously, "I'll get the male nurses from the hospital to come over for the time being, but you also know that nurses are not nurses. They can't be here all the time, so I'll have to ask Miss Fu for help." Of course, Fu Yun didn't refuse. Other than helping to wipe the toilet on his body, she could help with anything else. This was the savior of both mother and son. It was her duty to help. Dr. Meng said, "The hospital's cafeteria has already opened. I'll have to trouble you to prepare food for them. They have to eat easily digestible liquid food. This way, not only could they replenish their nutrition, but it wouldn't cause too much of a burden on the body." Fu Yun looked at the time. It was already 6 o'clock in the evening. They should be hungry, so she immediately went to the cafeteria to pack food. "Mr. Yu, please help to look after Wen." Fu Yun looked at Wen. They spoke in low voices and didn't wake him up. Instead, he slept even more soundly because he heard familiar voices. Sai Yu nodded. After Fu Yun left the room, Sai Yu looked at Dr. Meng with a faint smile. "Since when can't I afford to hire a nurse?" Dr. Meng smiled embarrassedly and said shamelessly, "Aren't I doing this for your own good?" "Oh, for my own good? Of course," Dr. Meng vowed. "President Sai, I've wanted to say this for a long time." Dr. Meng clicked his tongue and winked. "That Miss Fu is the future madam of the master, right? From the looks of it, you haven't confirmed your relationship yet." Dr. Meng looked miserable. "Based on your method of wooing someone, how many years will it take for you to succeed?" Sai Yu glanced at him calmly, but Dr. Meng wasn't afraid at all. He said with assurance, "Look at you. You're injured and it's time for you to show weakness. When it's time for you to feel pain, you don't have to be so strong. You should know that women are easily emotional and soft-hearted. If you show weakness, Miss Fu will definitely feel sorry for you." Dr. Meng imparted his experience earnestly. "Your hands are injured and it's inconvenient for you to do anything. This is the best time to warm up your relationship. At this time, don't think about not causing trouble for her. You have to bear everything silently. If you ask me, why do you need a nurse? Isn't it better for Miss Fu to take care of you personally? Let her help you wipe your body and show off your masculinity. When it's appropriate to cry out in pain, I'm sure you'll get her easily." Sai Yu. Dr. Meng looked as if he expected better from Sai Yu. He had never met someone so inexperienced. He didn't even know how to woo someone. TSK. Sai Yu looked up and glanced at him. "Why are you so good at this? Are you no longer single?" Dr. Meng. "Life is hard, brother. I'm someone who has had 3 girlfriends." Dr. Meng emphasized. "Oh." Sai Yu was indifferent. "So you're no longer single?" Dr. Meng. "Goodbye. Our fake brotherly relationship is gone." Dr. Meng saw that Sai Yu was so energetic, so he checked again and left in a huff. If he were to give Sai Yu any more advice, he would be out of his mind. Sai Yu didn't care about the angry Dr. Meng. He didn't feel guilty about stabbing his brother in the heart at all. What he said was the truth. How could a single person have the cheek to impart his experience to him? He sneered. "I heard everything." A childish voice sounded faintly. Sai Yu lowered his head and saw that Wen had woken up. She was looking at Sai Yu with her big bright eyes. "Sai Yu, when did you wake up?" "When Uncle Doctor imparts his experience to you." Sai Yu. Wen's gaze was complicated. In the past, he would have exploded when he heard these words. But now, Wen looked at the plaster bandages. He couldn't explode. Fu Yun came back with the packed lunchbox and bumped into Dr. Meng, who was leaving the room. Fu Yun greeted him. "Dr. Meng, you're leaving already?" Young Dr. Meng restrained his anger and smiled gently. "Yes, there's still a surgery to be performed later." Fu Yun said with admiration, "Thank you for your hard work. It's my duty." The two of them left without exchanging any pleasantries. Fu Yun entered the room and saw Sai Yu and Wen staring at each other. Fu Yun was happy to see that Wen had woken up. She thought it was a coincidence. Wen, are you hungry?" Mom packed a lot of delicious food. There was a dining table on the bed. Not only could she open the dining table and place it directly in front of Sai Yu, but there was also a movable dining table beside the bed. Fu Yun placed a bag of food in front of Sai Yu and then placed another bag of food on another dining table. She carefully carried Wen up and sat him down. Then, she opened the cutlery. Fu Yun asked the canteen staff what dishes were suitable for them. As for herself, she accompanied them and ate whatever was available. Fu Yun looked at Sai Yu and felt a little embarrassed. Mr. Yu, Wen is hungry. I'll feed him first, no matter what. Wen was the most important in Fu Yun's heart. Sai Yu understood, but he still felt a little jealous when he saw that his position was not as good as Wen's. But what could he do? This child was also his. Wen was still quite happy. When he realized that he was still number one in his mother's heart compared to Sai Yu's, the remaining sense of rejection disappeared instantly. Fu Yun fed Wen first. The little guy was weak now, so his mother had to feed him personally. Fu Yun gave in to him. Wen knew that Fu Yun definitely had not eaten yet, so she said, "Mom, eat too." Fu Yun originally said that she would eat after feeding them, but she could not resist Wen's insistence. Even Sai Yu said, "Eat with Wen first. I'm not in a hurry." In the end, under the insistence of the adult and child, Fu Yun ate with Wen. Basically, when Wen was full, Fu Yun would also be full after Fu Yun finished. As expected of a high-class private hospital, these patient meals were not worse than those prepared by a 5-star chef. Although the taste was lighter, it had a unique flavor. Fu Yun originally wanted to personally deliver meals to them tomorrow, but now that the canteen's food was so delicious, she did not need to spend so much time preparing 3 meals. She might as well use it to accompany the child and Sai Yu. After eating, Fu Yun immediately prepared to feed Sai Yu. The lunchbox was still warm, and Fu Yun took turns to use the spoon and chopsticks. At first, Fu Yun was very careful. After all, it was her first time taking care of an adult, and it was different from taking care of Wen. However, after familiarizing herself with it, she felt that there was no difference in feeding the adult and child. Wen watched as his mother took care of Sai Yu, and Sai Yu looked at his mother attentively and gently. He felt a little awkward and felt that his mother was about to be snatched away. He was unhappy. Sai Yu looked at the exquisite eyes in front of him, who was focused on feeding him. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt that Xiao Meng's words seemed to make some sense. The family of 3 in the hospital was getting along with each other tenderly, but outside, there was a storm of blood. After more and more evidence came out that Wen and Sai Yu were injured on set, more and more fans started to make a fuss. Sai Yu's family's fans were already a huge force. There were also Wen and Fu Yun Ruo's fans. No matter how many fans they had, when they gathered their strength, it was as if they had entered an uninhabited land. The other fans kept quiet and did not dare to show their faces. Recently, Apple Entertainment could not withstand the pressure. In order to appease the fans, the company officially admitted that Sai Yu and Wen were injured. However, they also said that their lives were not in danger. They were now hospitalized and hoped that the fans would remain calm. When the fans heard the news, they were not at all uneasy and were very irritable. They were not appeased at all and demanded an explanation from the production team. They also pestered the company to ask about the details of the injuries. Some rational fans tried their best to appease the fans who had lost control of their emotions, but they also asked for an explanation. In the end, the police announced a case on their official website. It was like a drop of water falling into hot oil, causing an explosion. The officials announced a criminal case. Although they did not directly state the names, they directly referred to a certain production team and a certain celebrity. They also said that the case was still under investigation. Weren't the recent injuries Sai Yu and Wen? The netizens exploded. Their idol's injuries were not an accident, but a premeditated murder. How could this be? The all-pervasive netizens dug deeper into the matter, and the actual facts were revealed one by one. The wires had been destroyed by someone, Wen had fallen from a high place, and Sai Yu had been injured in order to save Wen. The direct culprit had already been arrested. It was said that the real culprit was still under investigation. The culprit had harmed Wen and Fu Yun because they felt that the appearance of their idol, Fang Shueruo, had harmed them. Fuck. Was this the reason for you to be so cruel to a child? The angry netizens demanded that the case be dealt with seriously under the official account. They also flooded Fang Shueruo's social media accounts to vent their anger. Fang Shueruo's fans still defended her, saying that it had nothing to do with her. They were anti-fans, not the real Snowball, and that the actions of fans had nothing to do with their idol. Some people also felt that Fang Shueruo was unlucky and was implicated by fans. However, as the video was released, the originally rational netizens instantly lost their minds. Chapter 109. Fang Shueruo was taken away by the police. Even though the video was taken secretly and wasn't clear, it was obvious that Fang Shueruo was taken away by the police. The person who claimed to be an eyewitness posted the video with a caption saying that she was arrested as a suspect. What did this mean? It meant that she wasn't innocent. Fang Shueruo's fan count plummeted and the passers-by stopped speaking up for her. Not only that, people in the entertainment industry who had followed her or interacted with her in the past all unfollowed and deleted all information related to her, afraid that they would be involved. Little Moon and Zai fans were all angry on Fang Shueruo's social media account. Apart from that, there was also a large number of people who had quit being fans. Get out of the entertainment industry. Disgusting. I've never seen such a disgusting person. I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. You won't even let a child off. The word vicious is not enough to describe you. I'm no longer a fan. Adults should solve their own problems. Involving children is really low. In the past, I didn't believe that you were so scheming. I thought that someone was slandering you and I only believed what you said. But now, haha. Fang Shueruo. Get out of the entertainment industry. Get out of the entertainment industry. There was a lot of resistance online. Even Snowball's stubborn resistance was drowned out by the sea of resistance. After tonight, it would be completely impossible for Fang Shui to return to the entertainment industry. Yuan Xin looked at the public opinion online. This time, he would not let Fang Shueruo have a chance to make a comeback. Half an hour ago, Fang Shueruo didn't go anywhere else at the Fu residence. She had nothing to do now except stay at home with her family and read the news online. Originally, she didn't have many good friends in the entertainment industry. Those who were usually very close to her slowly distanced themselves from her after seeing her fall into silence. Some of them even avoided her. As for those close friends she had in the aristocratic circle when she was young, after the incident with the Fu family was exposed, many of them, including the first wives and the real heiresses, distanced themselves from her. In the past, she used to play with Fang Shueruo and laugh at Fu Yunruo. After she grew up, she understood the relationship between interests and Fang Shueruo. Other than a few illegitimate children who stuck close to her. However, Fang Shui also looked down on these people and disdained to interact with them. Only now did she realize that Chang Zhuyu was the only one by her side. She could only hold on tight to Chang Zhuyu. For the past few days, Fang Shui had been scrolling through the latest hot news. Perhaps it was because she was bored, or perhaps it was because of other reasons, but it was rare for her to stare at her phone all day long. It was the weekend and Fu Zonghong had been out for a few days. In the end, it was Fang Wanting who came looking for him personally and asked directly, "Is there someone out there? If you already have someone else, I can divorce you and give up my position." Fu Zonghong was so angry that his face turned red. He had a high social status. Even at his age, there were still young women who threw themselves at him. However, he had been indifferent to women since he was young. He was not like his other business partners, who had a wife at home but a mistress outside. When he was young, he did not even think about raising a mistress, let alone now that he was so old. He said in a rough voice, "There's no such thing. You're overthinking it." Fang Wanting still looked sad. She said slowly, "If there isn't someone out there, then what did I do wrong? So bad that you don't even go home?" At this point, Fu Zonghong still went home. Fu Zonghong was still a sentimental person. No matter what was wrong with Fang Wanting, at least she had taken care of him meticulously for the past 20 years. Even if she did not deserve credit, she had worked hard for him. He thought that since he was already so old, he was too lazy to do anything. As long as he was careful in the future, he would not let them hurt Yunruo again. As for his relationship with Yunruo and Wen, Fu Zonghong thought that if they did not accept him and were not willing to come back in a year or two, he would visit them a few more times. Over time, he would be able to mend their relationship. Forget it. This weekend, Fu Zonghong did not go anywhere and stayed at home. Even though Fu Zonghong did not say anything, his attitude made Fang Wanting feel much more relaxed. Fang Wanting continued to take care of the flowers in the courtyard. She held a pair of scissors and trimmed the branches and leaves. There was a peaceful smile on her face and her lowered eyebrows relaxed. She looked like she had lived a peaceful life. Fu Zonghong sat at the coffee table in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and sipped on a cup of fragrant tea. He turned his head to look out of the courtyard and his brows unconsciously relaxed. However, not long after, his phone suddenly rang. Fu Zonghong saw that it was his personal assistant calling. He knew that his personal assistant would not disturb him if it was not an urgent matter when he was resting. Hence, he answered the call. Chairman Fu, something has happened. When Fu Zonghong heard what his personal assistant said, his brows furrowed tightly. He suddenly stood up and asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure?" Fang Wanting looked up and saw that Fu Zonghong had stood up and was not paying attention to her. He seemed to be on the phone. She saw that Fu Zonghong's expression was serious and felt a little worried. Hence, she walked into the room. "Old Fu, what's wrong?" Fu Zonghong looked up at Fang Wanting. At that moment, his gaze was unfamiliar and scrutinizing. Fang Wanting's heart skipped a beat. What happened? She suddenly had an ominous feeling. Did that girl do something stupid behind her back again? Before Fu Zonghong could say anything, the doorbell suddenly rang. The servant went to open the door and saw a few uniformed police officers. "Who are you looking for?" The servant did not dare to stop them and respectfully invited them into the house. Someone immediately went to inform the master. "Mr. Fu, the police are here." Fu Zonghong was surprised for a moment. He seemed to have thought of something and his gaze turned cold. "Let them in." Fang Wanting felt uneasy. She went closer to Fu Zonghong and asked, "Why are the police here?" Fu Zonghong ignored her and walked out. Fang Wanting had no choice but to follow him. "Mr. Fu, madam." The police officers who came were considered polite, but their expressions were serious. Fu Zonghong asked politely, "It's not only you who have come to my humble abode. Is there anything important?" The police officers looked around and asked, "Is Fang Shueruo here?" Fu Zonghong's expression turned cold. He said to the servant beside him, "Ask Shueruo to come down." Fang Wanting frowned and asked uneasily, "Officers, why are you looking for my Shueruo?" An older police officer said seriously, "We suspect that she is related to a murder case and we need her to assist in the investigation." Fang Wanting's expression changed immediately. "Is there a misunderstanding? My Shueruo is weak. She didn't even dare to step on an ant since she was young. If there is a misunderstanding, we can explain it at the police station. My Shueruo is a public figure. How can she go to the police station? If there is such a misunderstanding and the news gets out, she will be too ashamed to face the public. She is a girl. If there is no suspicion, we will clarify it to the public." The older police officer said seriously. Fang Shueruo had been scrolling through her phone for a few days. She finally saw the news today. Her eyes lit up and she quickly browsed through it. After reading all the news that she wanted to read, she had a sly smile on her face. Then, she asked her agent to make use of this news to her advantage. No matter how harsh the criticism was now, once the rumors were clarified that she had nothing to do with it, the passers-by would feel guilty and become her fans. Her popularity with the public would quickly return. Just as she was feeling happy, Fang Shueruo heard a knock on the door. She was a little unhappy that she was disturbed, but she quickly changed her expression and went to open the door. "Miss Shueruo, sir is looking for you." "Okay." Fang Shueruo walked out of the door and walked past the people in front of her to go downstairs. The person who knocked on the door was a servant. Fang Shueruo did not notice the strange expression on the servant's face. She was still wondering why Fu Zonghong was looking for her. The reputation she had built up for so many years was all gone. Fang Shueruo was disappointed. This child, old Fu. Fang Shueruo felt uneasy. Shueruo must have been wronged. You. Before she could finish her sentence, she saw Fu Zonghong dressed up and ready to go out. Fang Shueruo's eyes lit up. Are you going to ask your connections? Fu Zonghong said coldly, I'm going to the hospital to visit Wen. Me too. Before Fang Shueruo could finish her sentence, Fu Zonghong said, you stay at home and wait for the news. Fu Zonghong left without looking back. He had just received a call about Wen's injury. If the call had not emphasized that she was only slightly injured, he would not have been so anxious. Fu Zonghong's personal assistant also speculated that the rumors online were ordered by Fang Shueruo. He told Fu Zonghong and asked him if he should suppress the news. Regardless of whether it was true or not, it was still a scandal that a stepdaughter wanted to murder her stepfather's daughter's son. Fu Zonghong did not ask anyone to suppress the news. He did not believe it, but he was not in the mood to deal with the messy news online. He only thought that if it had nothing to do with her, he could just clarify it. However, not long after, the police came to arrest Fang Shueruo personally. Fu Zonghong still had some influence. If the police did not have evidence, they would not have come to arrest her. At that moment, he was extremely disappointed. That was his biological grandson. Even if he did not raise him by his side, even if he only looked at him occasionally, Fu Zonghong still had a lot of feelings for him. He had already made up his mind to let Wen inherit the Fu Corporation. This was also a safeguard for Yun Ruo. But now, he was being told that his grandson was almost killed, and the murderer could be the stepdaughter that he had doted on for 20 years. Fu Zonghong was extremely angry. That was just an innocent child. How could she be so cruel? Fu Zonghong could not help but wonder if Fang Shueruo knew about this. If she knew, how could she act so innocent in front of him? Scenes from the past 20 years flashed through his mind like a rewind. He suddenly remembered how Yun Ruo had cried and complained to him about how Fang Wanping and her daughter bullied her, and how she didn't want them to stay at home. After being reprimanded by him many times, she stopped crying and throwing tantrums. Her temper became more and more irritable and weird. In the end, she looked at him with a sharp gaze. Fu Zonghong felt a throbbing pain in his head. He suddenly did not understand why he had treated his only biological daughter like this. Before he remarried, he only wanted to give his child a complete family to make up for the lack of maternal love. For this reason, he had chosen a gentle divorcee from an ordinary family. Chapter 110. The nurse at the front desk put the phone back and said apologetically, I'm sorry, sir. The patient is not accepting visitors. Fu Zonghong did not expect to be rejected. He was a little upset, but he was not willing to give up. Please help me ask again. I won't leave until I see her. The lady at the front desk hesitated. In the end, she called again. Miss Fu, Mr. Fu wants to visit the patient. Do you think it's not convenient for us here? Please ask him to go back. Then the call turned into a beeping sound. The lady at the front desk was helpless. Mr. Fu, what do you think? Fu Zonghong frowned and asked the lady at the front desk. How's Wen's injury? I'm sorry, we don't have the right to disclose the patient's privacy. Fu Zonghong's annual checkup was at this hospital. He knew the hospital's rules very well. After he could not get anything out of the lady, he tried to call Fu Yun, but it did not go through. In the end, he said with a pale face, I'm not feeling well. Help me get admitted to the hospital. The lady at the front desk was speechless. After the doctor at the hospital took a look at Fu Zonghong, they still helped him get admitted to the hospital. His body was not in good condition and he needed to be hospitalized for a checkup. Fu Zonghong had been feeling weak recently. His body had not been in good condition for the past few years. He had various problems, but he could control them well by having regular checkups. However, his body could not be too emotional. Today's incident had a huge impact on him. He had suppressed the anger in his heart and could not vent it out. But the most important thing now was to see Wen. His body was secondary. Since the internal department could not find out anything, Fu Zonghong called his special assistant and asked him to try his best to find out more information. Then, he went out to try his luck. Fu Yun did not know that Fu Zonghong was hospitalized because he wanted to see Wen. She accompanied Wen for a while. On the other hand, Sai Yu needed to recuperate for the next few days. In order to prevent Sai Yu from feeling lonely and bored, Fu Yun would always bring Wen along. Fu Yun Ruo could not stay idle at night. After she turned on her phone again, it vibrated non-stop. Messages appeared one after another, and there were dozens of missed calls. Many of them sent WeChat messages to inquire after failing to get through. Fu Yun also saw more than 10 missed calls from Aunt Mai and the others. Fu Yun immediately made a video call. In order not to worry them, she even asked Wen to come over and watch the video together. As soon as she called, the call was immediately connected. Aunt Mai and Uncle Mai's anxious faces were displayed on the screen. Ruoruo, what happened? The internet said that Wen was injured. How is it now? Fu Yun Ruo quickly comforted them. Aunt Mai, Uncle Mai, don't worry. Wen is fine. If you don't believe me, take a look. Fu Yun Ruo pointed the camera at Wen. Wen looked at the camera and obediently called out, Grandpa Mai, Grandma Mai. Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai leaned closer, trying their best to see Wen more clearly. Fu Yun Ruo understood their intentions. She pulled the camera a little further away and let Wen's entire body enter the camera. Wen even slowly turned around twice before approaching. She said cutely, Grandpa Mai, Grandma Mai, I'm fine. Don't worry. Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai's sharp eyes did not see any injuries. Their tense nerves immediately relaxed. She stroked her chest and said, God bless, God bless. Fortunately, she's fine. The internet said that Wen fell from more than 10 floors and is in critical condition. She's not out of danger yet. Fu Yun Ruo really did not know that the rumors on the internet were so exaggerated. She explained, the internet is exaggerating. Wen fell from a high place, but it wasn't very high. Moreover, she was caught by someone, so it's not a big deal. Is it a you? Where is he? Is he okay? After Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai knew that Wen was also filming television dramas, they learned from young people to surf the internet and chase after celebrities, so they knew what the internet said. Fu Yun Ruo turned to look at Sai Yu. He looked very serious now and did not know if she should show it to Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai. Aunt Mai noticed Fu Yun Ruo's gaze and quickly asked, Is a you there too? Let me and the old man take a look. They would not be at ease if they did not take a look. Sai Yu smiled at Fu Yun Ruo and said, Let me say hello to Aunt Mai and the others. Fu Yun Ruo then brought the phone in front of him. Sai Yu smiled and greeted them. After the two sides finished exchanging pleasantries, Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai were still worried and decided to make a trip to the capital. Fu Yun Ruo felt that it was too tiring for them to come all the way here. However, she had not seen them for a long time and wanted to see them too. In the end, she welcomed them very much. After hanging up the phone, Fu Yun Ruo started to reply to the messages one by one. Her hands were tired from replying, but these were all from her relatives and friends, so she replied very seriously. Wen leaned against Fu Yun Ruo and looked at the screen. Fu Yun Ruo gently talked about the concern for Wen on her WeChat moments. In the end, Fu Yun Ruo really could not reply to everyone. She posted on her WeChat moments to thank everyone for their concern and did not reply to them one by one. Then, she went to her own social media account to post that she was safe. Wen Ruo looked at the phone and said softly, Mom, I want to see the phone. Fu Yun Ruo was now obedient to Wen and gave her the phone. However, she did not want her to look at the news on the platform. She turned on a variety show for Wen. Let's watch My Parents and Me. Many children like to watch it. This variety show was organized by director Peng. It was about the interaction between cute children and their parents. It was the most popular variety show at the moment. Wen pouted and looked at Fu Yun Ruo with teary eyes. Fu Yun Ruo thought for a moment. If you don't want to watch this variety show, how about watching cartoons? When? Forget it. Cartoons were too childish. He would watch variety shows. When Ruo watched the video quietly, Sayu frowned and said to Fu Yunruo, "Help me call a male nurse." Fu Yunruo was stunned. She suddenly thought of something and her face turned red. Then, she called someone. Not long after, a tall male nurse walked over. She and the male nurse carefully helped Sayu up and moved him to the bathroom. Fu Yunruo did not follow them in. She felt very guilty and apologetic. Sayu was such a proud person. Now, for her, their child, he had become a person who could not move and needed help with the most basic life skills. It must be a blow to his self-esteem, right? However, he didn't reveal anything at all. When held his phone in his hand. Seeing that the adults were not paying attention to him, he began to search for Fang Shueruo. He decided to take revenge for himself. He did not want to wait for more than 10 years until he had the ability to act independently. It was just that he did not have the ability now. However, it did not matter. Money made the world go round. He could find a private investigator. Unfortunately, it was not 20 years later. When he was at odds with the Fang Corporation and the Chang family, he had collected a lot of evidence of them evading taxes and doing bad things. However, those were all in the recent 10 years. He did not find anything that was older than that. However, it did not matter. Since they had done those illegal things in the past, they would definitely do it now. He could find a private investigator. When saw the headlines on the internet. The headlines were very eye-catching. Fang Shueruo has been arrested. There were several hot searches. The second was a one-sided comment asking Fang Shueruo to get out of the entertainment industry. When clicked on it and was stunned for a moment. When the adults were discussing the mastermind behind the scenes, When happened to be asleep and did not hear it. Therefore, he did not know that the mastermind had been found. He was preparing to take revenge for himself when he realized that Fang Shui had already been arrested. Her reputation was also very bad. He had not done anything yet, however, Fang Shueruo was actually arrested. Wen was really shocked. One of the legends of the entertainment industry in the future was actually going to jail. This was worth celebrating. Wen was so happy that he wanted to throw his head back and laugh. Now, Fang Shui would not be able to achieve what she had in the previous life. Let's see how she could harm him. Once she relaxed, her body could not take it anymore and she fainted. At this moment, it was still very lively outside. Chapter 111. Fang Shui didn't know what went wrong. She didn't reveal any flaws, so no one would be able to trace it back to her. However, she was arrested and brought here, and the police even said that they had evidence. She didn't bribe anyone to commit the crime, nor did she order anyone to commit the crime. She had nothing to do with this, so how could there be evidence? She couldn't figure out what went wrong. Fang Shui couldn't imagine how the outside world would view her. Only by proving that she was innocent could she clear her name and make a beautiful comeback. She had expected to be slandered after the incident on set, but she never thought that she would be arrested. Fang Shui started to panic when she realized that everything was out of her control. No, she would be fine. She was just implicated. Everything had nothing to do with her. As long as she stayed calm and insisted that she didn't know anything, no one would be able to do anything to her. Fang Shui was detained in a single room in the detention center. The room was eerily quiet. Fang Shui looked around. There were 4 bunk beds, simple and crude. She was the only one standing in the middle of the room. She couldn't bear to stay there any longer. Fang Shui didn't expect her uncle to be so heartless. He knew that it would have a negative impact on her, but he didn't do anything and just let someone take her away. She had tried so hard to please him for so many years, thinking that he would return the favor. He had treated her better than Fu Yun for so many years, but when it came down to it, he still chose Fu Yun. Fang Shui's eyes darkened. Her mother would definitely come and save her. She definitely would. There was a commotion outside the metal door. Her eyes lit up and she couldn't wait to go over. Fang Shui, come with me, the police officer said sternly as he opened the door. Fang Shui's face lit up. She knew it. She knew that her mother would definitely come and save her. Fang Shui followed the police officer out and came to a room. However, she didn't see Fang Shui, but Chang Zhuyu. Brother Chang. Fang Shui saw Chang Zhuyu. Tears welled up in her eyes and she looked aggrieved. Brother Chang, you're finally here. Chang Zhuyu's heart ached as he hugged her. I'm late, don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. Chang Zhuyu had only found out about this when his assistant told him about it. He had asked his assistant to keep an eye on Fang Shui's situation online. Recently, he had been too busy to visit Fang Shui Ruo, but that didn't mean that he didn't care about her. Thinking about how much Shuira had suffered when he couldn't see her, Chang Zhuyu instructed his assistant not to slack off and pay attention to Shuira's situation. The Chang family had just recovered, and Chang Zhuyu was thinking of ways to find an investment film crew for Shui. They were still looking for a good production crew. As for the endorsement deal, Chang Zhuyu did not manage to get a good endorsement deal. Instead, he set his sights on his own company's products. However, as soon as he leaked the news, he was boycotted by the management and shareholders. They did not want a celebrity with a bad reputation to endorse his company. Wasn't this adding insult to injury? They had just suffered a huge blow and were slowly recovering. At this time, they should look for celebrities with positive energy and good influence. Because of this, Chang Zhuyu lost his temper. His prestige had dropped, and his words were no longer as authoritative as before. He had to take into account the opinions of the other shareholders. He felt that these people were all mercenaries. When it was beneficial to them, they would be one way, and now they were another. Chang Zhuyu even promised that he would get Shuira a good endorsement deal and a good script, but in the end, he did not get any of them. Just as he was about to smash the documents in anger, his assistant walked in with a serious expression. President Chang, bad news. What's the matter? Chang Zhuyu asked unhappily. Something happened to Miss Fang. The assistant hurriedly reported the matter to Chang Zhuyu. Chang Zhuyu's expression immediately turned cold. Then, he received a call from Fang Shui Ruo's manager. Chang Zhuyu said coldly, Shuira must have been framed. How could he sit still? He immediately went out to fetch Shuira. She must be very scared. With this thought in mind, Chang Zhuyu went to the detention center and saw the person he missed dearly. Sure enough, in just half a day, Shuira looked so haggard and scared. Seeing him was like seeing a hero who would save her from disaster. Chang Zhuyu comforted her for a while before he said coldly to the police officers, I'll take her away. I'll wait for you to give me an explanation. The police officers were speechless. The police officers stopped them. Mr. Chang, you can't take the suspect away. Do you have to go against the Chang family? The police officers were speechless. Was this young master of the Chang family crazy? Did he know where he was? Even the Chang family has to abide by the law. You've arrested the wrong person. Shui would not do such a thing. It's all a misunderstanding. The senior police officer said calmly, we arrested her because we have evidence and an arrest warrant. We won't accuse her for no reason. Chang Zhuyu's expression was extremely ugly. He looked at them coldly and then made a call. The Chang family and the government were naturally related. In the imperial city, who would not give the Chang family face? His call went through, but the other party was in a difficult position and said that they couldn't do anything about it. The impact of this matter was too great. Moreover, the higher-ups had instructed them to pay attention to it. They didn't dare to interfere. If they weren't careful, they might even get into trouble. At this time, it was too late to protect oneself. The other party told the Chang family not to contact him for the time being and hung up. Chang Zhuyu didn't expect that the other party wouldn't even give the Chang family face. His expression was extremely ugly. He couldn't figure out who was so powerful that they didn't even give the Chang family face. Chang Zhuyu really couldn't take Fang Shui away. He wanted to bail her out, but it didn't work. He couldn't look into Fang Shue's expectant eyes and could only say bitterly, "Shue, don't worry. I'll definitely get you out tomorrow, Brother Chang." Fang Shue's tears really came out. She didn't expect that even Chang Zhuyu couldn't bail her out. Could she still get out? In the end, Fang Shue's teary eyes left with a horrified expression. Chang Zhuyu said hatefully, "Where is Fu Yunruo?" Other than Fu Yunruo, he couldn't think of anyone else who would target Shuer like this. His Shuer was so gentle and kind. How could she do something to hurt others? It must be her. She wanted to take the opportunity to frame Shuer. He wouldn't let her succeed. The assistant used his connections and finally found out the name of the hospital. "We'll go there now." "Yes." The assistant didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly drove to the hospital. The hospital was very far away from them. It was almost in the north and south. If the traffic was smooth, it would take more than an hour to get there. Their luck wasn't very good. Not long after, it was rush hour. They were stuck in traffic for half a day and stopped several times. When they finally arrived at the hospital, it was already 9 o'clock. Chang Zhuyu walked into the hospital with a cold aura and asked to see someone. The receptionist said apologetically, "I'm sorry, sir. It's past visiting hours." They politely but firmly asked him to leave. Chang Zhuyu's upbringing made it impossible for him to make a scene in the hospital. In the end, he could only leave and stay in a hotel near the hospital. It would be easier to find someone the next day. Fu Yunruo naturally didn't know that so many people were looking for her outside. She slept with Wen, but she didn't sleep well. She woke up from time to time and looked at Wen in her arms. She used her fingers to check if she was breathing and gently touched her small chest. She only went back to sleep after making sure that she was fine. However, she kept having nightmares. One moment, she dreamed that she and Sai Yu didn't catch Wen. The small person fell to the ground and didn't move. The ground was covered in blood. The next moment, she dreamed that Sai Yu and Wen were lying on the ground and didn't move. Every time she woke up, her heart would palpitate. The last time Fu Yunruo woke up, the sky was already slightly bright. She looked at the time and saw that it was already 6 o'clock in the morning. Fu Yunruo was no longer sleepy. She lay quietly for a while and seemed to hear some movement in the room. Fu Yunruo thought that Sai Yu couldn't move freely and was worried. She got up quietly and went out. She heard some movement in the room and knocked on the door. "Mr. Yu, are you awake?" She paused. "I'm coming in." "Yes." Fu Yunruo opened the door and entered. The bedside lamp in Sai Yu's room was always on. The light was dim, but she could see the furnishings in the room clearly. Sai Yu had already sat up and his feet were on the ground. He then looked over. Fu Yunruo walked over and asked with concern, "Why are you up so early?" Sai Yu said, "I want to go to the washroom." Fu Yunruo supported him. "Let me help you over." Sai Yu raised his eyebrows and didn't refuse. He walked into the washroom with Fu Yunruo's help. Fu Yunruo supported him to the toilet and was about to go out when she was stopped by Sai Yu. "Ruo." "Yes." Fu Yunruo turned around. Sai Yu said, "My hand can't move." Fu Yunruo reacted and her face turned red. She stuttered, I'd better get someone to come over." Without waiting for his response, Fu Yunruo ran out and quickly called for someone on the internal line. Sai Yu Ruo looked at her fleeing figure and couldn't help but chuckle with a happy expression. Xiao Meng's words made sense. After Fu Yunruo called for someone, she pressed her burning cheeks and was embarrassed to go in again. The male nurse came very quickly and arrived in less than 2 minutes. Fu Yunruo was curious about how he came so quickly, but when she saw the male nurse's expression, it was obvious that he was on the night shift, so she didn't ask much. The male nurse came out not long after he went in and left. Fu Yunruo tried her best to pretend that the embarrassing incident in the morning didn't happen. She hugged Wen and continued to sleep. When it was slightly past 7 o'clock, Fu Yunruo woke up. She washed up and went to the canteen to get breakfast. When Ruo woke up, He didn't see Fu Yunruo. He rubbed his eyes and looked around in confusion. He called out Mummy softly, but there was no response. He lay on the side of the bed and slid down. He put on his small shoes and went to look for Sai Yu. Sai Yu Ruo had already woken up, but he was half lying down and resting with his eyes closed. When he heard movement at the door, Sai Yu Ruo opened his eyes and saw Wen Ruo poking his head out. He smiled. Wen, come here. Wen Ruo looked at Sai Yu and walked over with his short legs. Chapter 112. Wen stood by the bed and looked up at Sai Yu. He asked curiously, "Where's Mommy?" He had not seen his mother since he woke up. "Where did she go?" Sai Yu said, "She probably went to buy breakfast." Wen nodded, indicating that he understood. Sai Yu asked softly, "Do you want to come up?" Wen thought for a moment and pushed the stool to the side of the bed. He stepped on the stool and climbed onto the bed before sitting down. He wanted to cross his legs, but his short and fat legs made it impossible for him to do so. He could only settle for the next best thing. Wen looked at the cast on his body with a worried and guilty expression. Finally, he lowered his head and apologized, "I'm sorry. He should not have been so willful. He was still a child and should not have done such dangerous things and implicated others. Thank you. If it were not for Sai Yu, he would not have only suffered some internal injuries. It was Sai Yu who had suffered for him." Sai Yu instinctively wanted to rub Wen's head, but the moment he moved his hand, he felt a piercing pain. He had no choice but to give up. He smiled gently and said, "It's a father's responsibility to protect his child." Wen looked up at him. His little mouth moved, but in the end, he did not say anything. Sai Yu was not disappointed, but he felt that he could talk to Wen. "I also want to apologize to Wen. When I found out that you were my son, I did not come clean with you immediately. Instead, I hid it from you and approached you with ulterior motives. It's right for you to be angry with me. I know that I was wrong. Can you forgive Daddy? I won't snatch Mommy away from you. I'll protect Mommy with you, okay?" He had always thought that during this period of time, Wen was uncomfortable with him and refused to accept him. Firstly, she was angry at him for lying to her. Secondly, she was afraid that he would snatch away Fu Yunruo or take her away from Fu Yunruo. The third reason was that Fu Yunruo had explained to Wen. He always thought that Wen was angry for the first two reasons. Wen looked away and said shyly, "That's not it. This was only one of the reasons." What he cared about the most was why he and his mother had never seen Sai Yu appear in their previous life. However, that was all in his previous life. The trajectory of this life had been different from the moment he was born. He could no longer pursue the matter. To the Sai Yu of this life, he still didn't know anything. Everything would never happen. Wen shouldn't have blamed Sai Yu for what happened in his previous life. He should have separated the two lives. However, he was used to being awkward. For a moment, Wen couldn't say those two words and wrung her fingers helplessly. When Sai Yu saw this, he coaxed her. "Yes, Wen isn't angry at Daddy. You just can't say Daddy because you've never called me that before. It's okay." Even if he lowered his head cooperatively, Fu Yun stood on her tiptoes and raised her hand to help wash his face. Wen was just happy that his mother valued him the most, but when he looked up, he saw that they were very close to each other again. He pouted and felt that his mother had been snatched away. Fu Yun didn't know that Wen was thinking so much. After she tidied up the two of them, she brought them out of the bathroom and sat down to eat breakfast. As expected, Fu Yun fed Sai Yu breakfast again. Wen ate by himself today. When he saw Sai Yu being taken care of by his mother like a baby, he suddenly felt that the breakfast in his mouth didn't taste good. After breakfast, the doctor came to patrol the room. Dr. Xiao Meng checked Sai Yu's body and changed his dressing. 2 big bowls of black medicine were also sent over. Internal injuries would recover faster with traditional Chinese medicine, and there wouldn't be any sequelae. Wen was also forced to drink a big bowl of medicine. He lay there helplessly and felt that he was surrounded by bitterness. Dr. Xiaomeng suggested, "It's better to let the child lie down more and sleep more. He will recover faster." Fu Yun had no reason to disobey, so she quickly nodded in agreement. Sai Yu was even more immobile. Fu Yun walked around and finally carried Wen to Sai Yu's bed so that the father and son could recuperate together. The bed wasn't small, so Wen could lie down on it. If he was bored, he could even chat with him. Sai Yu was more than happy to do so. The family of 3 stayed in the room, and their relationship quickly warmed up. Sai Yu felt that this injury was worth it. The 2 most important people in his life were by his side, and his life was very complete. However, the family of 3's world was soon broken. At 10 o'clock, the ward became lively. When Yuan Xin and the rest came to the hospital to visit, they were caught red-handed by Chang Zhuyu, who was waiting for them. Sai Yu had already instructed that other than Yuan Xin and Tian Tian, he wouldn't see anyone else, especially Chang Zhuyu. He couldn't even reveal any information about the ward. The Sai family was the major shareholder of this hospital, and it was managed by the Meng family. Chang Zhuyu came early in the morning, but not only was he unable to get any information, he wasn't even allowed to enter the ward. There were even bodyguards guarding the ward. How could Yuan Xin be threatened by Chang Zhuyu? He asked the bodyguards to stop him and went up himself. However, he stopped Chang Zhuyu. He didn't expect Fu Zonghong to be there. He had directly checked into the ward last night. Although it wasn't on the same floor as Sai Yu and the rest, it was a coincidence that they bumped into each other. Yuan Xin took into account that he was Fu Yun's biological father, so he didn't ask the bodyguards to throw him out. Then, all these years, wouldn't his daughter be surrounded by even more evil intentions? Did Fang Wanting know? Her daughter had such bad intentions towards his daughter. Fu Zonghong couldn't convince himself that Fang Wanting didn't know anything. He was more inclined to believe that it was because Fang Wanting had bad intentions towards Yun Ruo. Fang Shui was also influenced by Yun Ruo from a young age. Even if that wasn't the case, she had stayed at home and watched over the 2 children. How could she not have seen it? She was trying to cover up the truth to protect her daughter. She was even trying to distort the truth. After all these years, had he actually misjudged her? Fu Zonghong thought about how Fu Yun Ruo had cried and complained since they were young. In the end, she was hysterical, but Fu Zonghong looked at Fu Yun Ruo, but he only saw an indifferent face. There was no sadness or joy. After all these years, she must have lost all hope in him, right? Fu Zonghong clutched his chest. His heart was in pain. He panted violently. In the end, his vision turned black and he fell backwards. Yuan Xin happened to be at the side and quickly caught him. "Chairman Fu, are you okay?" Yuan Xin was shocked. It couldn't be, right? He was so weak that he couldn't even stand looking at some evidence. Seeing this, Fu Yun Ruo quickly called the doctor over. No matter who this person was, she couldn't just sit back and watch someone collapse in front of her. This happened to be a hospital. The doctor came quickly and took him away. Yuan Xin looked at Sai Yu and asked tentatively, "Shall I go and take a look?" Fu Yun Ruo didn't express her opinion, so Yuan Xin followed her out. Fu Yun Ruo took the document and looked at the information inside. "You found the evidence so quickly?" Sai Yu responded. She didn't say that the chat records were real, but they didn't find out that the person behind this was Fang Shui Ruo. They were the ones who made this connection into evidence. The facts proved that they hadn't wronged her. However, this evidence can only charge her with instigation. She couldn't even be considered an accomplice because there was no monetary exchange between them and she didn't directly ask others to do bad things. She didn't provide any help either. She only instigated. No wonder she was so fearless. That person directly took the blame for himself and refused to admit that Fang Shui Ruo asked him to do it. But even so, he could still get her to give a heavy sentence. Fu Yun Ruo closed the document. That's enough. Fang Shui Ruo was such a proud person. As long as she was convicted, it would become a stain on her record that couldn't be washed away. It would be the biggest punishment for her. The Chang family wouldn't accept a female head of the family who had been in jail and harmed people, right? Looking at Fu Zonghong, he wouldn't protect her anymore. Fu Yunruo looked at Sai Yu and said gratefully, "Thank you." Otherwise, she didn't know when she would have found the evidence. "You don't have to be so polite with me." Sai Yu smiled. "Leave these things to me. Don't let these things affect you. You and Wen just have to be happy." He had been careless this time, but there wouldn't be a next time. He would always protect them under his wings. Chapter 113. Yuan Xin came back an hour later. Fu Yun looked over, but before she could ask anything, Yuan Xin said, "Chairman Fu's body is not suitable for extreme emotions. He needs to rest." Yuan Xin explained Fu Zonghong's situation in detail. He did not have any major problems like terminal illnesses, but he had a lot of minor problems. He was old after all, and he spent a lot of energy managing such a big company. It would not be a big problem for him to cultivate his body and mind. However, if he continued to be so emotional, it would affect his lifespan. Fu Yun thought about this. Fu Zonghong had died a long time ago in the original novel, so his body was not very good. Fu Yun felt complicated. No matter what, it was good that he was alive. She hoped that he would take care of his body. Seeing that Fu Yun did not mention meeting Fu Zonghong, Yuan Xin naturally changed the topic. He mentioned that the situation on the internet was one-sided. Sai Yu, Fu Yun, and Wen's fans were attacking Fang Shue's fans. Fang Shui and Fang Shue's brainless fans were being attacked by everyone. Because Chang Zhuyu made it clear that Fang Shui was innocent, the Chang family's shares fell instantly. Apple Entertainment also sued Fang Shui in the name of Sai Yu and Wen. The court had already accepted the case, and the case was going through the process. Sai Yu directly sent a team of lawyers. With their ability, the outcome would not be unexpected. Fang Shui's outcome was already foreseeable. Fu Yun felt relieved when she heard this. She had never hated someone so much. If Wen and Sai Yu had not been so lucky, the consequences would have been unimaginable. If anything happened to Wen, she would die together with Fang Shui. In the future, no matter if she went to jail or something else, she deserved it. Fu Yun really wanted to handle Fang Shui's matter personally, but Sai Yu took over the matter and didn't let her get involved. Other than paying attention to the progress, she stayed in the hospital to take care of Sai Yu and Wen. When Fu Zonghong woke up in the ward, there was no one beside him except for a nurse wearing a mask. She noticed that Fu Zonghong had opened his eyes, so she said politely, "Mr. Fu, you're awake. How are you feeling?" As he asked, he pressed the bell beside the bed, ready to call the doctor over for a re-examination. Fu Zonghong did not see Fu Yun here and felt very upset. His heart was no longer as painful as it was before he fainted, so he said, "I'm fine." However, his vitality had been damaged, and his complexion was sickly. Soon, a doctor came in. He gave Fu Zonghong a simple examination and explained his condition. Fu Zonghong did not take it to heart and asked, "Did anyone come to see me before I woke up?" "No." Fu Zonghong was shocked. He fainted in front of Yun Ruo, but she did not even come to see him. Fu Zonghong could not help but think that his actions over the years had exhausted Yun Ruo's affection for him. After the doctor finished his examination, he gave a few instructions and left. The nurse brought in some medicine and a glass of water. Fu Zonghong looked dispirited and silently took the medicine. "Mr. Fu, your phone." The nurse passed Fu Zonghong's phone to him. Fu Zonghong opened the phone and saw that there were more than 10 missed calls. Other than the special assistant, most of the calls were from Fang Wanting. He did not need to answer to know what she wanted to say. Fu Zonghong was expressionless. Then, he called his special assistant and asked him to come to the hospital. There were waves of people who wanted to visit Sai Yu and Wen, but most of them were rejected by Yuan Xin as they needed to rest. The fans online were very concerned about Sai Yu and Wen's health. Although the company's official account and their official account told them that they were fine, How could they be at ease without seeing it with their own eyes? Therefore, the fans left comments one after another, asking them to do a live broadcast or take some photos for them to feel at ease. In the end, Fu Yun recorded a video of them telling them that they were fine and uploaded it to her account. Wen Wen was wearing a small hospital gown, but she did not have any external injuries. Therefore, the netizens were not worried. However, when they saw Sai Yu, they were all shocked. Even though they deliberately avoided the injury when they took the photos, the sharp-eyed netizens found clues and confirmed that Sai Yu was seriously injured. Their idol had never been injured so seriously even when she was filming dangerous scenes. Although they all knew that their idol's injury was a result of saving someone's life, it was a hero's medal and they should be proud. However, if not for Fang Shui, Wen Wen would not have been injured. Their idol would not have been injured. With this thought, they became even angrier at Fang Shui. Fu Yun had to take care of the adult and child and had to contact a group of friends. She could only take some time out every day to pay attention to the outside world. However, she did not even have that little time to pay attention to it. Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai rushed to the capital the next day after the call with them. Fu Yun could not leave, so she asked Chen Shengnan to go to the airport to pick her up before coming to the hospital. When Fu Yun saw Uncle Mai and Aunt Mai, she immediately felt wronged and could not help but lean against Aunt Mai. "Aunt Mai, I missed you so much." Aunt Mai's heart ached as she said, "We missed you too. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.